Hi, Melissa. Hi, Rita. Hi, Michael.
Unmute. Okay,
There you go. Hi.
here I am. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. We're just missing April.
There. Can you hear me, Becky?
Yes,
Perfect.
perfectly.
Good.
And see you.
We're doing the two-part thing again today.
You've got that down to a simple technique.
Well, after the first couple of times, yes. Technology is a struggle sometimes, I admit. It's great until it doesn't work, right? So
Right.
I have to move this side to this side because now I can't see my screen. Is that better? Yes, I can see my screen. Okay.
I think I'm gonna call April just because, oh, there she is. I knew she was in town.
That's the neat thing about remote. You can be anywhere in the world.
Except nobody goes anywhere.
It's true. Very true.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. Well, yeah, but you know what? We can still have remote stuff, right? And just
Yeah.
have more freedom to move about the world.
Yeah. Hey, Melissa, I did give you the co-host abilities just because I wasn't sure if your computer wasn't all the way up yet. If that's
No, just leave me as co-host just in case we have an issue.
okay. Sounds good.
Since the laptop is, well, 12 years old, I think, or something of that nature. It's still running though.
That's a trick.
Back up often.
Yeah. Well, we don't use it for anything needing to back up.
Okay.
So something like this is fine, but we don't store pictures on it or documents. That's the other one. My husband uses my other one for a Zoom with his board gaming buddies tonight. They're one of their last things is tonight. So he needs the higher powered one. This tech, he's not a techie, so this would be a little harder for him to run. Shall we call ourselves to order? April, I see April and I see Rita.
Yep.
So we'll call ourselves to order.
And happy belated birthday, Rita.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Linda, are you ready?
Yes, thanks.
All right. Is there any changes to the agenda or additions, Becky, that we hadn't known about?
Nope. We're just moving ahead with the classification hearing and then meeting with the finance committee. I'm not sure how much of the school committee I'll make it or not.
Okay, so still not too much reply. Okay, so let's open for public comment. If there's anyone here who has public comment.
I do.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
And I'll make it short because I know you guys got a full evening. So I just wanted to follow up on my email from the last couple of days, just in person because it's better to do it than an email. So I think first I'll just say I appreciate Becky and Kevin taking the time last Thursday to clarify. But I think what I wanted to put in front of the select board, and I don't know if there's a policy about access to the town council or if it's changed or whatever, but
Standing policy, Michael. It's been
Okay.
here for about 30 years.
okay, let me just finish my thing.
You asked.
Okay. But
Right.
I mean, it's working itself out. I think, in terms of the facts, but it did strike me. I mean, Becky had started to explain to me why it was different when I was, chair of the school committee and then chair of the select board. But it seems like in this instance, what ended up happening is that um, the information that we sent, if I didn't sort of follow up and Jeff didn't follow up, we would have got the wrong information legally, which could have had implications. It seems like it may not have implications in terms of the planning board, because I still might have to recuse myself from what Becky and Kevin found out. But if it hadn't, if it hadn't turned out that way, it could actually have affected attendance on the planning board. And when we have multiple large projects over the long term, basically we could be approving projects just because we don't have enough people to show up, because recusal is an issue. So I think what my concern was clarifying when things get forward to town council and how that decision gets made. And it's not that Becky shouldn't be part of the process and be informed, but I think, it makes sense at some level to be able to prevent, you don't want to have everyone knocking on the door. It seems like chairs making that determination, in consultation with Becky makes sense. But it did sort of concern me that, if we didn't follow up, I would have gotten the wrong advice and it wouldn't have been legally correct. And the whole reason we have town council is to get legal determinations. So you guys can discuss it, but I just that was my concern in the email. People would say that I'm pushy. So if someone was less pushy than me, they probably would have stopped with the wrong determination. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate you letting us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, we're a few minutes early, actually. If I look at the agenda, it does say the classifications at 5:45. Does anybody else have any comments or anything they'd like to share? Any happy news they'd like to share in the 10 minutes? Okay.
We had snow up here. Did anyone else see the snow?
Yes.
I was watching the computer screen all day, so no, I did not see the snow.
No. How did I miss the snow?
It was just, that sideways white stuff that, just as the sun is going down, it was
Very brief.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and we didn't lose power today. That's good news, right? No trees have fallen down today?
My trek home after that storm we came home from Chicopee and we were at Chris's parents' house on Sunday, and we started coming up the hill, got to North Valley, kind of went up North Valley, and there's a pine tree kind of across the road, and Chris goes, I'll move it. So he got out of the car and he did, he moved it over. We got by it.
Okay.
Then we got to the Weaver's house in Pelham, higher up on North Valley, and there wasn't any moving to that. So we went down around up to 202, thought, I could cross Baker, and there was a tree down past Jeff Lacey's. It took us an hour and a half to get home from Chicopee. The first one, the tree fell in front of us right by Pickering's Plumbing on Main Street.
Oh my God.
It was just one thing after another. We went through Echo Hill, and yeah. So
That's crazy.
it was all the normal alternative routes were starting to block up, and I thought, when we get home, are we going to have electricity? And we did, and it was great.
Yeah, and it was nice to have electricity. And,
It was, but Chris was calling 911 as we hit each tree, reporting them. I'm like, honey, you're going to have to call.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you made it.
We did, and we, safely. But it was an interesting trek.
Hi, Ellen.
There, hello.
Hello?
I'm not used to being muted. So.
Ellen,
We know.
I'm waving from across the street. Can you see me?
Sure, we'll wave to each other.
I'd like that on my tombstone. I'm not used to being muted. I like that.
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
Ellen, did you hear my response? We know.
Oh, no, I didn't. I love it, Kevin. Oh,
So, yeah, I just have a question going back to what Michael raised. Excuse me. So Becky, can you explain what the policy is? Just because I'm using town attorney services.
Yeah,
Town council.
that before that, if an issue comes up, committee chairs or the town clerk, whoever has an issue usually confers with the town administrator, and then we discuss whether it's an appropriate time to ask that question, if we can use the free services of the AG, the attorney of the day first and see what we get there. So it's just, some things are automatic. We just call Donna because it's clear that they're going to just tell us to call Donna, because that's the most frequent answer we get when we call legal services, is to speak to your own town council. This issue is an interesting one. Michael, as chair of the school committee, he was in a very different position, and chair of, because the school committee has their own legal budget.
Okay.
That's outside of the town. They never call the town administrator. They may talk to the superintendent to monitor the budget, but that's very different. And they have two different attorneys. They have a labor attorney and a regular attorney. But the second, when he was chair of the select board, I believe he was free to call, but usually even that, like Melissa would normally would talk to me, or when April was on, was the chair, we'd talk about the issues before the calls were made, so that, sometimes we'd get on a conference call, so we'd both get the information. But this one is very unusual. I did talk to Deacon, who does not recall Michael ever mentioning that he was going to call the attorney or include the attorney in the emails. So even that, Michael just got in a habit of calling directly, and it happened throughout the zoning amendment process when they were writing the change amendments to the bylaw. He and Jeff were calling directly, and neither of them had contacted me before that process started, which was out of the norm. Jeff used to always let me know if he had a big issue. And so I think that's the way it normally works. Michael has been outside of those parameters, and I will continue, because I called him Sunday. I called him Sunday in the middle of the day or in the morning, because he started using town council, including her in emails. And then he did it again in one of the emails where he's complaining about the email policy, the lawyer use policy, which that one appears to, why should she be included in that email? Because she's going to read it and log 15 minutes. And so I am working hard. I had to have a long conversation with Miriam, because she included Donna in her emails all throughout the process about the trespassing. And I talked to Donna about it, and she said, she has relationships with both Michael and Miriam, but she's working not to respond to their emails specifically whenever they just reach out of context. And she's trying to back me up at this point to make sure that we have some measure of control on who is speaking with council. And I find out eventually when the bill comes in, but it was thousands of dollars for the zoning bylaw amendments. And it's just common practice to keep track of it and, maximize our use of it.
So can I suggest something? And that is, maybe an email should go out to all boards, just reminding everybody of the fact that access to town council should come through the town administrator and not to independently contact her. And the reason is to really manage the, this isn't a very expensive service, and it should be managed by one person. Because I don't think people realize how the costs can add up.
And to tell you the truth, outside of Michael and Miriam, I have never had an issue with this.
Yeah, I just think as a matter of course, we always have
care.
changes on
Yeah.
boards, and so it's just good to
I'll be
tell everybody.
Well, I had one select board member who called constantly, but it was different.
I think that would make sense. I think that makes perfect sense, Rita. Just to, even though it's unusual, just to make it very clear again.
Yeah.
And it also will provide Becky the avenue to be able to, if town council needs to be contacted, there can be maybe a session of multiple questions. You can make it more efficient of time.
Right.
Also.
That's a good point.
I used to always have a list going into annual town meeting and sit next to her. So we do our best.
Yep.
And there are times where it's not going to work, but for the most time it does. So, no. Yeah. Okay, shall we? I see that it's 5:45. Shall we start in on our classification hearing? Any objections?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So Kevin, just for public record, do you want to give us a quick run through of the document that you sent us to sum it up?
Actually, what I'd like to tell anybody participating in the call is I am going to be reading from and referring to a document that is publicly available. If you go to the Town of Shutesbury website, under Departments, pick Assessors, the very first item on the webpage says Public Hearing, and at the bottom of it in orange letters says click here to see presentation. The presentation is publicly available to all.
Thank you.
I am referring to a document that was emailed on Friday, I believe, to the Select Board and the Finance Committee. Since that time, there have been two minor changes. Selectman Farrell pointed out a typo, and I clarified what something on the very last page means. That the corrected document is the one on the website.
Okay.
But basically, this is an annual tax classification hearing that the Board of Selectmen is required by law to hold every year to decide four things. The first is to have a single or a split tax rate. The second is whether to adopt or not adopt an open space discount. The third is to adopt or not adopt a residential exemption. And the fourth is to adopt or not adopt a small commercial exemption. What I would like to do is to give you some background on how we got to where we are today with the tax rate. If people don't know how to calculate a tax rate, there are two parts. The first is the tax levy. That's the amount being raised through property taxes as voted on by Shutesbury's voters at the various town meetings. For fiscal year 21, that levy is $5,110,663. The second part of the equation is the total value of property in town. That's calculated by assessors and certified by the Department of Revenue. For fiscal 21, that number is $225,519,640. That valuation increased over fiscal 20 by $5,509,670, or a 2.5% increase over fiscal 20's value. In calculating the new values, specifically for residences, we studied all single-family residential property sales for calendar year 2019, which is January 1 through December 31st. Due to the small sample sizes, we studied 2 years, January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019, for condos, 2 families, 3 families, and beyond. Overall, residential values rose by $2.5 million, a 1.2% increase due to market sales during the time periods. I'd like to point out the continuing rise in sales prices versus assessed values that we've seen throughout calendar year 20 will be reflected in fiscal year 2022 valuations. We are always a year and a half behind or a year behind just based on how you value market trends. And just to give you an example of where those trends are in the current year, we had a property go on the market this week for $369,000. Don't know what it'll sell for. It's assessed at $253,200. That's the type of increase we're seeing throughout 2020. And that will come about next year in the fiscal 2022 valuations and the fiscal 2022 tax rate. Significant value changes we've seen from fiscal year 20 to fiscal 21 are a $30,490 or 5.3% decrease in industrial values. This is attributable to one property, that is the Wheelock property owned by W.D. Coles, and I'll explain why it dropped. We were taxing it in the first year of valuation as regular open space at $3,200 an acre. What I have done is change it to the actual lease terms between Next Era, who is operating the solar farm, and what they are paying to W.D. Coles. After this initial drop, that value will now rise every year during the life of the lease, and probably within 3 or 4 years will be in the several $100,000 range. And by pegging it to the lease rate, the lease actually determines the value of the land. It is what I would call appeal proof because we're going based on the lease terms, and we will get substantially more value than taxing it as open land. And it is not open land. It is being used for a specific purpose. So that accounts for that decrease. We have a 42.85% increase in personal property values. This includes the normal value increases for the 3 main drivers, National Grid, Eversource, and Verizon, and a $1.5 million year 2 of the solar farm pilot, and 2003 $300 increase in values from phase 1 of the personal property audit the Department of Revenue wants us to complete by fiscal year 23. And just so you know, that involved a contract vendor driving the entire town, finding personal property that was not found before, and upgrading the value of what we had value things to more correct current values. The second part of that, by the way, is ongoing and involves contacting the owners of who own a second home in the town and making sure we have all of them getting personal property tax bills. That part of the audit you will see in fiscal year 2022, so that when we get to the 23 recertification year, all personal property is up to date. Now, getting back to setting the tax rate or the business of tonight. As you know, Shutesbury's property tax base is primarily residential property. This year, 94.5% of the property in town is residential, and the remaining 5.5% is CIP, which stands for commercial, industrial, and personal property. We are allowed to have a split tax rate that shifts some of the residential burden to the CIP properties. Because we don't have very much commercial and industrial property, we've always maintained a single tax rate. Again, that single tax rate is calculated by dividing the tax levy by the valuation, multiplying that number by 1,000. This works out to a fiscal year 21 tax rate of $22.66 per thousand of valuation. This is a drop of $1.38 from the current fiscal 20 tax rate of $24.04. If you remember, at the June annual town meeting and September special town meeting, voters agreed to use $220,000 of free cash to lower the tax rate for 1 year. That one-time use of free cash is 97 cents of that property tax decrease. The remaining 41 cents come from increased values. I want to remind everybody listening and all of you that was for 1 fiscal year only to lower taxes as Shutesbury's residents deal with the economic effects of COVID-19. This means the rate will go back up in fiscal year 2022 with no free cash applied. Okay, I also want to point out the percentage of residential property supporting the tax bill declined by 1.3% over fiscal 20. That is solely due to the growth in valuation from the second year of the solar farm pilot. I want to point out that such installations, once the aggravation during construction ends, consume nothing in town services while lowering the percentage, however slight, paid by homeowners. Okay, and I just want to toss out that if the initial pilot figure that AMP discussed with town officials earlier this year for 4 solar farms, and again, that was just an off-the-cuff initial discussion between Becky and I believe Melissa, in which they tossed out a figure. Had that figure been in reality, the new tax rate would be a $4.93 decrease to $19.11. As it is, the average single family home for fiscal 21, and that's taking the 748 homes and dividing them into the total residential value for single family homes, that's $250,434. Okay. With the fiscal 20 rate, such a household would be paying $6,020.43. With the 21 tax rate that drops $1.38, that bill now drops by $345.60 for the year to $5,674.83. That's before the CPA surcharge. And just if that rate did drop the additional $493 to $19.11, it would have been a drop of $889.04 more on that tax bill to $4,785.79. I'm just showing that as an example to say that to obtain meaningful tax relief, the town perhaps needs to look at how such alternative sources of revenue can work to homeowners' benefit. And on the last page in this document you have, I'll show you just what we're getting from the third year of the solar farm pilot that exists now and the first year of the batteries that are now running. And that's an additional $11,407 in revenue that the town can spend next year, and an additional $2.2 million in value being added to the total value of the town. Okay, tonight you have 4 votes. Your first is to shift the burden to the CIP by up to 150%. Any reduction in the residential burden would increase taxes paid by those and would affect people as following. The more than a dozen small businesses in town, their rate and bill would go up. The approximately 130 second homes in town, primarily in the Lake Wyola area, would get the increase. And would be increasing the value that electric utilities, National Grid, and Eversource pay. Also, all 123 owners of land in Chapter 61 forestry, agricultural, open space, recreation land would see a tax hike. Because Shutesbury does not have a split rate, I'm not giving you any examples of what a shift would mean. And we do not recommend adopting a shift, but staying at the 1 tax rate. The second decision is to offer an open space discount of up to 25%. That's not available in Shutesbury because we do not classify open land as open space. The third decision is whether to allow a residential exemption to people owning second homes, in which up to 20% of the value of their principal home could be decreased. There are only 15 communities in Massachusetts that do this. Most of them are along the Atlantic seacoast. We have not adopted it and we don't recommend it. Finally, there's an option to exempt 10% of the value of small commercial parcels occupied by businesses employing 10% or fewer and having a property value of less than 1 million. Only 14 communities in Massachusetts do it. We don't have enough businesses to offer it. So we recommend not doing it. When we go to one tax rate, the excess levy capacity for fiscal year 21 is $559,392.41. What this figure means is that amount could have been raised through property taxes under Prop 2.5 cap, but the voters chose not to do so. Had you raised all of that money through taxes, the single tax rate would have been $25.14. But under law, we can't go above the $25 limit. So we would have been capped at $25, or actually increasing by $2.34 higher than the 2266 tax rate. What that levy capacity does mean, it should some kind of catastrophe hit the town and you need to raise money, you could raise basically $559,000 without an override, but it would severely impact next year's tax rate. So the motions for tonight are as follows. I'm going to ask you to move that the board establish a residential factor of 1, meaning a single tax rate for fiscal year 2021. And Madam Chairman, I ask you to call for that vote.
Okay. May I have a motion?
I move that the select board vote to establish a residential factor of 1, meaning a single tax rate for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? No? All in favor?
Farrell, I.
Stein, aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Okay, the second, I ask you to make a motion not to adopt the open space discount for fiscal year 2021.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that the select board vote not to adopt an open space discount for fiscal year 2021.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? No? Okay. All in favor?
Farrell, I.
Stein, aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Okay, the third motion is I ask the board to vote not to adopt a residential exemption for fiscal year 2021.
So I move that the select board vote not to adopt a residential exemption for FY 2021.
Second.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Farrell, I.
Stein, aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
And finally, I ask that the board vote not to adopt a small commercial exemption for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, motion.
I move that the select board vote not to adopt a small commercial exemption for fiscal year 2021.
Okay.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? No. All in favor?
Farrell, I.
Stein, aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Okay, for the select board, as a result of those 4 votes, residential property now accounts for 94.525% of the property values, and commercial, industrial, and personal property account for the remaining. The total value of the town is now $225,519,640. Okay, the changes in values are as follows. Overall, residential values rose 1.2%. Open space, because we have none, rose 0. Commercial rose by 0.81%. Industrial declined by 5.34%. And again, I explained that is adjusting the Wheelock solar farm acreage to the actual lease terms, and that will be climbing back up in the future. and personal property rose by 42.76%, primarily due to increases in the second year of the solar farm pilot, increases in utility, and again, the audit. Overall, the values of the town rose by 2.5% from fiscal 20 to 21. The residential portion declined due to the increase in personal property primarily, declined by 1.27%, and commercial rose again due to that large increase in personal property by 28.71%. But right now, that 1.27% means that $94.53 of every $100 paid in property taxes comes from residential property owners, and $5.47 comes from commercial. That is a slight shift from 425 to 547 for the commercial. That means residential people are paying less of the burden of the taxes, however slight. And the last thing I just want to tell you is, what does the Wheelock Solar Pilot contribute? In new growth value for fiscal 22, an additional $1.8 million in new growth value. The batteries, which will be valued for the first time, that are up and running, $395,000 in new value. And I mentioned that the land value will go up. It will go up by $1,710 in value, yielding, it sounds small, another $79.24 in property taxes. So the total additional value in fiscal 22, which is a year from now, from just the Wheelock Solar Farm is $2.2 million. It will pay $86,383 in revenue, and of that revenue, $11,407 will be new revenue in year 3 of the farm and year 1 of the batteries. And I'm just pointing that out so you know what that contributes to the town. That concludes the info for assessors. I'll be happy to answer anybody's questions and comments if you have any. If not, Madam Chairman, then you can close the hearing. But I would
Okay.
ask, you would ask if anyone has questions.
Does anyone have questions they'd like to ask? Thank you, Kevin. I would like to offer some thanks for going through that and being so precise and so much information and so much detail.
Okay, I would just point out, we have the town clerk is online here. She had to witness your 4 votes. Grace is waving.
Hi, Grace.
Grace has her instructions on what to do in Gateway tomorrow. I know the 2 board members from the Board of Assessors are on, Susan and Jeff. They have their instructions for me. And I know the 3 of you have instructions. I ask that you all complete them by noon tomorrow, at which time I can press the button, and then it's up to the Department of Revenue to certify our rate. That could take a day, that could take a week. But once they do that, we can send out the tax bills, which I know will make Ellen happy.
Can do.
I just wanted to just comment on how helpful it was to have, the Wheelock parcel really taken out and looked at, how much revenue is being generated for the town, especially as we move forward.
Well,
With these other possibilities.
I'm not recommending any board to take any action, but I'm trying to, as an IAAO member, which is the International Association of Assessing Officers member, part of being a member is you are asked to explain to the public anything that could affect the tax rate. So I'm trying very carefully, without taking sides, to say, the initial offer on those 4 parcels would have lowered the tax rate another, a total of $4.93 or $889.04 off a tax bill. I think people need to understand that as we go forward, that, you can cut the tax bill other ways than deleting expenses. You can look at revenues that cost the town nothing, and yet lower the tax rate substantially. And I'm only pointing that out. I'm not advocating one way or another for it, but that's part of the job. So that's the reason why I called it out. And I also think it's important to note the effect of Wheelock going forward, because we're now in the second year of the value, And we're into 3 or 4 million of, I think we're at almost at 4 million of value we're recognizing. And next year, we're going up another 1.8 million of value. It's having an impact on the value of the town. And again, when we dropped 41 cents due to value increases, I didn't break out what's attributed to Wheelock, but it's probably almost half of that. And people need to understand that that's driving the bill and the rate in the bill down as we go into more and more years of those pilots. So thank you, April. That's why I did it. It's not advocating for position, it's educating you.
Well, it's helpful.
So if there are no more questions, then Jeff and Susan Reyes and Jeff Quackenbush and myself, we're done. But I thank you for your time. It's the thing we have to do every year to get this done. But I hope I've given you some more education with this document. I just remind anybody listening, if you go to the assessor's webpage, the very first item on the Shutesbury website, assessor's department webpage, is this public hearing, and at the bottom you can click to access the document I went through. It's public record. So, and anybody who's listening who has questions or comments, you know, I will reply after the hearing if need be.
Thanks, Kevin. It is it's very clear. It was very well done.
Okay, and if there's any more info you'd like to see in future years, let me know, or any less info, let me know. I know I'm throwing the kitchen sink at you, but I'm trying to give you everything that went into this so you have a grasp of it.
It's very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kevin?
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night. Phew.
Poof, people gone. It's interesting when people start to disappear.
Yes.
And we are a little early for the second part of our meeting, which, oops, I need my agenda back.
Sorry about that. I thought I thought the hearing would take 45 minutes, and clearly it was very efficient.
Well, he is very efficient, and I do appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
But we can wait until people arrive. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? Or I know we have to log on by the noon tomorrow to sign that. And Grace will help us if we don't have our passwords. So.
No, she's not here.
Nope, she's not. She's disappeared. Becky, is Grace in case I can't remember what my password is?
Yes, she is in from 10 to noon and 2 to 5.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not sure I'll remember because I think it was since last year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure I don't remember.
Yeah.
And I probably thought at the time when I'll remember this.
So the finance committee is coming on at 6:30. I mean, I know some people are here already.
Yep, I see Jim and Susie. Yes, Linda, go ahead.
Hi, I put some more thank you notes in your folder. So
Okay.
next time you're in, I know it's not a warrant week, but just so you know that there's a
They're
batch of new ones there for you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Is there anything there that we had to sign from last week? I know I had stopped in. Was there anything that Gail prepared?
The vendor warrants are there now. April did sign them. Rita, did you come back again? I don't
No,
know.
I didn't. I came back. I came in whenever Friday, but I haven't come back, so I can come back in the morning.
Great.
Okay,
They're still here.
okay.
And yeah, we had one person who had been exposed to COVID and they have tested negatively. So that's good news.
Very good news.
Yeah, it's certainly a hot topic as we approach the holidays.
We do have a second person who we're waiting to hear on. But they will not be in the building until they hear, so. So everyone's being very cautious, which we all appreciate.
Mhm.
Hi, Jim.
There was good news about, this may have been yesterday. I can't remember if it's out yesterday or this morning, about a second vaccine from Moderna.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
we got a ways to go, but there's some hope.
no, well, if they're this effective now, you know, yeah. There was an interview I thought was interesting. It was, I don't remember the person's name, but he was part of the trial for, I believe it was Moderna's vaccine. And they were talking to him about side effects or what he felt. And he said he felt an immune response after the first injection, which is not unexpected. It lasted for a day or two. And then with the second injection, it was less. It lasted only 1 day. You know, just the headachy and achy, you know, your body reacts to the vaccine, you know. Oftentimes people have a similar reaction to the flu shot the first time. But yeah, he was describing it. And so it was interesting to hear.
Yes, I will always get a flu shot now. I see the
I did
light.
too many. I maybe this is sharing too much in open meeting, but I got a flu shot when they started coming out. I got it every year because I had grew up and had bronchitis a lot, probably as a, well, besides the wood heat being the sole source of heat in the house, probably you know, from the flu, like a complication from the flu.
Mhm.
So when I started getting the flu shot, my bronchitis never appeared until the year I said, I don't need one. And I ended up with bronchitis, tonsillitis, and a sinus infection
Oh,
all
boy.
at the same time. My poor mother had to drive me from Shutesbury down to the doctors, and the pressure change in driving down the hill was enormous. So lost 2 days, completely lost 2 days. I don't know where they went. So after that, flu shot every year. I was gonna say, anybody have any Thanksgiving plans, but we're not doing that, really, right? Anybody have any favorite Thanksgiving foods? How about that?
Yeah, I'm finding it's hard to not do it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah. A lot of people, this is when I see them.
Yeah, it kind of starts the holiday season in our family. You know, you go from Thanksgiving and then you start the holiday, you know, weekends at this person's house, that person's house, you know.
Yeah. So one thing I've been doing is starting planning. Okay, so next year is going to be super.
Yeah.
Next year.
Right, make it a big thing. Huge
Mhm.
thing. Yeah.
Huge.
Thing. Yep. So does anybody have any favorite Thanksgiving foods that they like at the holidays? No? Becky, you're muted.
Those green beans with mushroom soup with crunchy crunch.
Green bean casserole.
Yes, and that's the only time we have it, but I can't have Thanksgiving without it.
Mine's pumpkin pie. My
Ooh.
particular recipe, not just any recipe. It's taken years to find the right one, but
Wow.
Yep.
What's different about your recipe?
I think it has a lot to do with the process. So the process is you take, and it has half pumpkin, half sweet potatoes. So it's kind of it merges or it compromises the sweet potato pie argument versus pumpkin pie argument, because you put it in one. But the process is to cook the pumpkin and the sweet potatoes or the candied yams in a pot first with your sugar and your spices. Heat it until the color changes to like a burnt orange or a darker orange color. Then on a side bowl, you put in your eggs and your cream and your vanilla. And you take I call it a boat motor. It's a immersion blender, and you blend it all together before, and you add your egg mixture to cool off the pumpkin mixture, and then you put it in your pie shell. The recipe itself says it makes 1 deep dish pie. It makes 3 deep dish pies. The recipe is a little underrepresented in how much you actually get. But the texture is very smooth. It's not jello-y like, it's not grainy. It's just a very smooth pumpkin pie. Yeah. It takes a good couple of hours to make it.
Sounds delicious.
Well, when we have a meeting, if everybody likes pumpkin pie, when we have a meeting in person, maybe I'll bring one.
I think you need to share the recipe, Melissa.
Yeah, it's from actually the Cooks magazine. The Cooks, do you familiar with
Oh,
this magazine?
okay. I
Yeah,
have their big baking book. I bet it's in there.
I did too.
Yeah.
It might be. If it's not, I will share it though, and my
Okay.
notes of what I do that's slightly different.
Actually, I got the Cook's baking book for my birthday.
Did you? That's
Perfect.
awesome. I waited until I had a coupon at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. That's how I learned. So I didn't know how to cook when I got married. My
Yeah.
poor husband. I knew how to change tires and use power tools. Cooking was a mystery. So I had to learn how to cook. Food
Mm.
Network and Cooks magazine were
Yeah.
the 2 things that greatly improved my cooking skills.
Yep.
But you know how to use a Sawzall.
Well, you saw that firsthand.
I did. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, that was just the mom didn't want us underfoot with Graham while she was cooking. So we were always sent out in the garage with Dad. Well, that sometimes was a mistake because we'd come in grease from head to toe because he was a mechanic.
You learned great stuff.
We did. Yes, or I did. My sister didn't quite grasp it in the same way. But can't complain. Chris could cook, so we had a nice balance. His dad didn't own power tools, and he could cook, and then I had the, so.
The other thing we have traditionally that not everybody has at Thanksgiving is red chili. Make it into a gravy
Ooh.
and just pour it all over the top of everything. It's very hot. It's a New Mexico favorite.
Oh,
That's delicious.
It is. Especially with all those mashed potatoes and the turkey. And
it's
Who has-
blending the 2 together.
I did just email out, I'm sorry, I didn't do it early, but it's just a copy of the Amherst Pelham
Oh, thank you.
sheet that, shows where we're at. It's from the last meeting in May, Amherst produced it in May. It was like the resolution of going to the 45% statutory. Just so everybody has that.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, I'll bring it up. Whoops. Yeah, we didn't get any new information, right, Becky? This is just the current information.
And I apologize, I didn't get through to Doug.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Meeting,
They may not have anything yet either.
Right.
know.
Yeah, I think they're just so busy bouncing between, being in or out of school, and
Mhm.
it's a tough time.
Well, and on a daily basis too, right?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the discussion about the metrics that the school is using and how the Board of Health is involved in helping establish that. I guess they're trying to use the state guidelines as much as they can.
Okay.
But I know that our elementary school is gearing up for the December 7th return of, is it the pre-K through 1?
Yeah, my nephew's going back.
Oh, so it's not.
He's first grade.
Oh, he is first. Sorry.
The youngest one is first grade. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My sister's relieved.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I-
she's not liking repeating first grade.
Yeah, that's it. I can't imagine. The parents all deserve some kind of,
They may have a new appreciation for the in class, you send, sometimes I think, you think you send your kid off to school, you don't necessarily give it a second thought of the energy it takes to, even on one child basis, to keep them focused, so.
so hopefully there will be a heightened appreciation for teachers.
Yeah.
I know Susie knows more about that than I do.
I think the initial one is K1, 2.
Yep.
And then it's 5 and 6 in January and 3 and 4 in February.
Hmm.
That's the plan.
So staged.
Mhm.
Aye.
And I don't know, what are they doing in the high school is still remote, as I understand, is that right? No, nobody's going in.
I think there was some special ed at one point, but I don't know if that's sustained or not.
I think it is.
Is it?
But they opened and then they had to shut down again after 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what their plan is now. When they're planning to return.
Yeah, UMass just had some tick-ups of on campus or tick-ups of virus testing.
Great. How is Amherst College managing? Because it seems like you've got a really tight rein on these kids.
They do. It's a bubble. You can't leave campus. You can't. They do allow order in, but you have to come to a certain place to pick it up. Right now, they've gone because of the upticks. No one can eat together, so they're all eating separately. And they're leaving. Actually, they're leaving the Friday the 20th. They're all except for a select number of internationals and a few other groups are staying. So about 100 students on campus. They're testing each student 3 times a week.
Wow.
So every student gets tested 3 times a week so they can see it before it becomes an issue. And they could do the contact tracing. You couldn't go into the other dorms. You can only stay in the one you were assigned and living in. So they really clamped down as much as they could. And so far, fingers crossed, it's been pretty good. But it's a small number of students. And so spring is going to be more students. And what does that mean? This was the first years and sophomores. The others are going to be the first years, juniors and seniors. Will the students abide by the rules as they come back, even though that they signed? So yeah, and then Mount Holyoke's going to bring back half of theirs, or about half of theirs. So that's about 1,100 students for them. So
Wow.
yeah, it's interesting. There wasn't many in-person classes at Amherst either. It was pretty much remote, even if you were on campus. So,
Wow.
but I think the testing was the big thing, and then having it a bubble, creating a bubble.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's almost 6:30.
Wow.
I know. Is anybody from the school committee going to be able to make it? Is that?
Not looking good. I'm sorry. I only got 2 no's and I haven't received any yeses.
They had a executive session meeting on Monday and they have a regular meeting on Thursday. So I think it could be about a busy time.
Okay. Where is that?
Good afternoon, everybody. Or I guess it's evening now.
Hi, Kim. It is.
Yes.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, hi.
Hi, hi.
Hi.
Ah,
So. Hi, Bob.
where is it? Where am I?
And now I gotta make my screen larger now so I can see everybody that popping in.
Wow.
Melody, you're in another beautiful place.
One of my many homes.
Yeah, very nice.
Very, very nice view.
Okay, it's 6:31. Becky, do you see anybody popping in? I don't want to move off my screen with this older technology. You're muted, Becky.
I just realized. Um, So Lauren Paquin Thomas is here.
Yep.
And Steve is working on logging in.
Okay.
So if you can just give them another minute,
I
that'd
will.
be great. But I don't see the others. But that's great. At least we have a couple people.
All right.
No George.
Yeah, from finance, we've got everyone but George.
Right.
Okay. Do you need to call yourselves to order, Jim?
Yeah, why don't we do? I'll call the finance committee meeting to order.
Second.
And the select board is already in order. We had a prior meeting before this meeting.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, there's George.
Okay, we've got the full finance committee.
Okay.
George is here.
Do you still see Steve trying to,
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't see him yet. Since he's the one person that's been working with the region, he's kind of important.
Yep.
But he should be here any minute.
Okay.
Hi, Lauren. I'm glad you could make it for the school committee. Thank you. Okay, I guess he should be in shortly, so maybe we should move ahead.
Okay, we can move ahead. Welcome, everybody. And glad to see everybody. So as a tradition that has happened in the last few years or many years, the Select Board, Finance Committee, and School Committee have kind of met as a way to check base with each other heading into the four-town meeting. So that's what we are doing here today. We don't have additional information past, Becky had emailed out the information as of, you said May, right, Becky?
Yeah, the agreement that was made last year, just to remind everyone that as far as the assessment method goes, here's Steve.
Here's Steve. Hi, Steve.
What was agreed to last year, as a reminder, was a 45% statutory 5-year rolling average. And that's what happened last year.
Yeah, so we're kind of coming into that with that in mind, and knowing that probably the meeting on the 4th, and this is my guess, in my opinion, will be pretty much COVID related is my thought, and budget related to that. So we want to check in with everyone here, the committees, to see if we're on the right page. And Rita and April, feel free to jump in too. As far as, you know, the assessment method too, if that question pops up.
Right. Because last year we're still working towards the 100% was my understanding. And we got to 45% last year. And it looks like these figures, these are from the school in May, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before any of this sort of affected greatly with COVID.
That's right.
At least the current school year was affected.
Yeah, so they did have that reduction last year at Amherst's request. Because, you know, we were planning for this year and we'd already had 3 months of COVID experience, and Amherst revenue from restaurants and everything was down. So they did make a downward adjustment on the budget that we're currently in. The one thing that has held up, and it's not across the board, maybe I can find it for you. Doug Slaughter did an analysis of how the state aid came in. I think Steve has that. I don't know. Steve, would you like to review that for everyone? Or, hi, Steve. Do you know what that email you sent me? I can bring it up too.
He's muted.
But Steve shared an email where Doug Slaughter reviewed the state aid. So while Chapter 70 stayed level for all communities, there were some changes, and I think there were minimal losses for Amherst from what I recall. Is that correct, Steve?
That is correct. My little laptop, I can't seem to pull up that email.
Okay, I'll find it while you guys talk.
That was for FY '21. You're talking about state aid, Chapter 70 for '21, the year we're in.
Yes, the year we're in. Because I think they had some with charter and some other things. Their numbers did not come in at 100%. Let me see if I can find.
They also had some enrollment changes too, with parents going to private schools, right? And charter schools that were going back and not doing remotely. Or am I imagining that.
No, I think I heard that too, as well. Well, Steve, what is your sense at the regional school, at the regional school committee meetings about where things, what's the temperature?
We haven't even gotten anywhere close to talking about the budget yet. But as far as students leaving the region, yeah, the numbers are down quite a bit. We've lost a number of students to the Morse Hill program, and not too many homeschoolers, but some private schools. But yeah, it's down about 30 students more than it should be.
That's Shutesbury, Steve?
No, that's at the region.
Oh,
Okay, the whole region, right.
Bob, partly what drew students away is that charter schools and private schools went back to school in person, where public schools did mostly remotely, at least initially.
Yeah.
So there was a draw for parents who needed the students to be in school when they were working.
And who could afford it?
Exactly.
So if there hasn't been any discussion about the budget so far, what are we going to be doing at the four-town meeting? Is it simply the formula, or has there been any discussion about that, Steve, about what is the agenda?
No, the region is meeting tonight, and I believe that's on the agenda. But yeah, we haven't discussed anything about the four-town meeting or budget yet.
Jim,
So-
you're muted, Jim.
There was an email that just came out today from the region with an agenda for that December meeting. I forwarded it it was addressed to the Shutesbury Finance Committee, along with the other participants with these, for the four-town meeting.
Right.
So I forwarded that to the rest of the Finance Committee. So there is an agenda that
Oh,
was
there it is. Yep.
issued today.
Hold on, I'll open it.
Yeah, the select board, you guys must have this.
Yep.
When was it sent? Oh, is this the
Yeah.
one?
It was
Yeah,
earlier today.
Jim, I don't think I got that myself.
That's okay. I'll bring it up on my screen.
Bob, I sent it to you. I sent it to you this afternoon.
So I can quickly run through what it is. It's the welcome and introductions, FY22 revenue projections, FY22 expense projections, assessment method options, FY22 capital plan proposal and related debt, feedback and questions, and then there's 2 items for adjourning the meeting. So that's their thoughts on the agenda. So we have one.
Can I make a remark, please, Chair?
Oh, go ahead.
Just want to remind the committee and everyone else that last year we did agree to a assessment method which was 45% structural with a rolling average, which was a concession made by us to create a compromise that was acceptable, which ended up being acceptable to all. But the understanding that I had was that we were going to go forward this year closer to statutory. And that I think that that's a good thing. I think that the townspeople, the taxpayers, town meeting want us to do that. I think that should be our position going to the meeting. Whether that will be resolved at this next meeting, I don't think that's likely, but I think that they're going to have to express our views and what our expectations are. And I think we should have a strong position that moves us significantly in that direction, subject to whatever negotiations, whatever concessions we make at the second meeting, which I think traditionally occurs after the first of the year, February, something like that, right? So I think I would just expect that we can reasonably expect that we will have to make a presentation and we'll be able to express our position on the method of assessment at this upcoming meeting, and that we should be prepared to do that. And I personally want to support the idea that we come out with a firm proposal that could be backed off in the new year that moves us significantly in that direction towards statutory. Not the whole shebang in this year, but maybe asking for 2 years to get to full statutory with 5-year rolling or something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the increments. Last year we went from, what was it before the 45? Was it
30.
30%? It was 30% to 45%. So would 60% be a reasonable place to start?
Personally, I think that if we want to end up at 60, we got to start with 70. Just because that's the way things go, you know. I would say that would put us on a 3-year track rather than a 2-year track, which is what my recollection is. We were talking about a 3-year track counting last year. And so now we're going to, because of the considerations that we'll all certainly understand and respect, I think that we could back off of that and make it ask for 2 years and then back off to 3 years from today, from this year. Something like that seems to be a reasonable course of action, but it would still keep us on track.
Jay, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to voice, I think, a sort of a different take on what I think our negotiating position should be, which is one where we take a 1-year pause on this move towards a statutory method, assessment method, given the circumstances, which obviously nobody who negotiated our agreement last year had any idea what was going to be coming in this current year. So I just think given what given what the town of Amherst has experienced this year, the enormous sort of strains that they're under, I'm a little nervous that we are sort of not negotiating in great faith by just proceeding with the same strategy that we would have had in place coming out of last year's agreement. And I think a compromise would be to make a strong position that, and articulate a strong position that says, Shutesbury is committed and feels strongly that a incremental move towards the statutory method is what should be happening long-term, or even short. I mean, we can put a time frame on it, but that we understand that there are very unique circumstances at work this year. So we're agreeing, we would agree to freezing the assessment method at the same 45% for this year, with an understanding that assuming, the beginning of an economic recovery next year, that we proceed with our move towards statutory at that point. That's my position, and it's not a position that's comes from any feeling that the statutory method isn't ultimately the right and best method for the town. I still feel that it is. I just think that there are different dynamics in play right now, and I think it's important we are part of a community, we're part of a region, we're collaborating with towns to fund and support a regional school system, and I just don't think this is an appropriate time for us to be proceeding as if, it's business as usual. That's
Jim,
my-
sorry, AJ, I cut you off. I didn't mean
That's
to.
okay. I'm done. Yep.
Okay. Jim,
You're not done, AJ, because I just have a question for you, actually.
Okay.
No, what you mentioned, and just so that we all have the same understanding, AJ, you mentioned Amherst has some unique challenges. Just so that we're all on the same page, can you just highlight what you view as the challenges that Amherst is facing?
Well, I wish
Amherst and not to the region.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I was armed with better information. I mean, I think that the fact that we don't have more sort of materials from the region going into this 4 towns meeting, it seems to me is yet another indication that they're like scrambling right now and dealing with all sorts of more immediate issues, and they're probably not in a position to have planned for this four-town meeting. But I mean, I'm just reacting to the same kind of news that we all are aware of about the impact on various sources of revenue for the town of Amherst, which aren't as relevant to, to our town. I mean, we haven't had a sales tax. That's not a revenue stream for our town, and so we in that way we're fortunate to have not been to not have to deal with that specific pain that the town is. I mean, I think there's also this issue that I don't know that we need is maybe isn't totally relevant right now for this year, but the issue that we've been discussing about the hold harmless provision that might be changing in the law, which might mean that the region is going to take a big hit. Now, that's not something that affects Amherst, and it affects all of our towns if that happens. But anyway, I don't have specific numbers other than a sort of general awareness that there are huge losses in kind of critical revenue areas for the town of Amherst. And I think, we have individual taxpayers that I think in our town that are suffering, no doubt, for sure. But I haven't seen evidence that like we've had any of our sources of revenue take the kind of hit that Amherst has. And I'm just assuming that that's going to be a big message and theme that the town is going to raise in this four towns meeting.
Yeah, Jay, I agree with you. Half of their population was non-existent, and the tourism was down to almost zero. So, and that's their big, that's college students in tourism and sports events and stuff is their big income and revenue boost. And all that was pretty much non-existent for the last 8 months.
I'd just like to, if I may just respond to what AJ said, is that okay, or is it the wrong time?
You can respond, sure.
Just want to remind everybody that Amherst has a budget of about $65 million, and we have a budget of about $6+ million. The difference, if we move towards statutory, the difference that will make to Shutesbury is probably some minuscule percentage of Amherst's budget. It will have a much larger impact on our budget and on our taxpayer than it would have on the Amherst taxpayer. So I think it's really, we have to understand, put this in the proper context and the proper proportion. The difference to the Shutesbury taxpayer as a percentage of his income is just so much greater than it would be to the Amherst taxpayer. For this moving towards statutory, which we have been very, very reasonable, I think, and fair to move in a slow, but I believe deliberate manner towards that method. And talk about short-term versus long-term. It's been a long-term process already. And, we on the Finance Committee, at least, we have an obligation to represent our taxpayers. And I think going into the meeting, if we don't represent the strong opinion that's abroad in the town that we are supposed to be moving in that direction, that is towards a statutory method, I think we're going to find that a lot of people will be displeased with that in our voters. So I, for one, certainly would be willing to listen to Amherst and whatever they have to say when we go to the meeting. But as of now, where we have no new data, we don't have a budget, we don't have anything to compare. To concede the point a priori, I think is a serious mistake. And so I think we should be prepared to present our request or our opinion that the statutory method, we should proceed along that track.
Susie.
I think there's a couple of other factors. One is how the foundation budget and the state aid is being apportioned, and I don't know enough about that yet. I'm trying to learn about it. The information from DESE is a lot of sheets and a lot of numbers, but I don't know how the foundation principles are affecting both Leverett and Pelham and Amherst and Shutesbury. And then there is the part about chapter 21 that I don't think we know yet. And again, it will affect all 4 towns, not just Amherst. And the effects on smaller towns like Shutesbury are bigger than the effects on a large town. But I think because Amherst is a large town and their revenue stream has been stomped, I definitely feel in my own personal life, which is not always the right model to use, but I believe a lot of people are sort of holding still until we figure out where we're going to end up on the other side of this COVID pandemic. So I believe we can gather more information. We can find out if those towns have got an idea of how the foundation aid is and chapter 78 is going to come along, how it is for FY21, if there's any projection about what FY22 looks like in those areas. And I don't know when they guessed chapter 21 and those numbers will come out. I don't know if they're projecting them for FY22 or not, but I'd like to have that information before we make a hard stand. And AJ wasn't saying a hard stand. He was proposing a pause for this year with the intent to continue down towards statutory. And I support that kind of position. And I would like to get the information of how foundation formula is affecting different towns, the amount of state aid different towns receive, and how the chapter 21 numbers are going to affect all 4 towns.
Becky?
Susie, I'm just going to read from Doug Slaughter's email. What he's looking at is the governor's revised budget that just came out. Not the governor's, but now the House has come out with their budget. And he says the region's income is about $41,000 less from the chapter 70 line in our budget. We had in our ads cuts a net reduction in state support of 68,000. For Amherst, no change from the budgeted amount in the town budget. Pelham, the town will receive an additional 29,000. And for Shutesbury, we receive the same amount. So as far as the only information we have is on FY21. And I have no idea when we're going to start seeing any information on FY22. It probably will not be January as it normally is in other years. So unless there's some clear statement that comes out that they do make a change to the foundation budget that we can calculate from, and I haven't seen that, I'm not sure at all when we might have that information. So I think we're going to have to, I don't know. At least we know that there should be very little change for this current year. For the FY21, the state is holding true to its promise, and they're not recalculating based on the October 1 numbers, from what I understand. They're holding it harmless to the numbers from last year.
For this current year, they're holding it harmless.
They're holding harmless.
And they're not projecting holding it harmless for FY22, which is the one we're trying to plan.
They have not made any statements about FY22 at this time.
And that unusualness, the delay that's going on with the state is affecting everybody. So it's another part of the argument that says, hold still this year and get more real data. And it's going to be late. And if it's going to be late, then hold still would pertain to the December meeting for 4 towns and probably the February meeting.
Don't think. Leslie.
Hi, a voice from the peanut gallery. You all recall that at town meeting 2019, there was very strong support that was expressed towards moving towards the statutory method. There was a lot of data that was generated, how much the town was subsidizing some of the other towns, in particular Amherst. And I'm of the opinion that there's still a lot of sentiment in the town to move towards the statutory method. Regarding what AJ had to say about Amherst feeling a lot of pain in their income, I would rebut that by saying that the taxpayers of Shutesbury for all these years subsidizing other towns' share in the regional assessment, our pain is that we have no other income, and our pain is we support the budget through our residential real estate tax rates. And that kind of pain has been going on for many years. And the sense that we should start moving towards a more equitable share of that regional assessment, I think should continue to be on the table.
Thank you, Leslie. Michael.
Just pretty much going to reiterate what Leslie said, but one of the main things, though, that I think you need to consider is that taxpayers have been looking for this movement towards statutory for many years, and to go into a meeting, a 4-town meeting, and tell the other towns that Shutesbury is not interested in moving anywhere towards statutory this year, it is not going to go over well with a large majority of the taxpayers. And you might, if you're going to do that, you might want to keep in mind what that means if the assessment method is not voted in next year, and it moves very rapidly into a mandatory statutory situation. Just throw that out for you.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, April. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, we're in a very, I think AJ raises really good points, as does Susie, in terms of, these are extraordinary times, and the intent of our town is to continue working towards the statutory 5-year rolling average. And the reality is we're in this delicate balance of how do we respond to that at the same time being a town who can bargain in good faith with our other communities. I think this is not simple. It's complicated.
I agree, April. It is complicated. George?
Yeah, I didn't realize my video was off. I've been raising my hand and you've been ignoring me. I realized it. I apologize. We've been working in good faith with the other communities for a number of years, and we were hoping to do this in 4 years, and those 4 years have passed, and we're not even halfway at statutory yet. I agree with what a lot of everyone has said. I think, as April just said, this is a unique year. We've been working in good faith. We can all argue about how badly we're all hurt. Everybody is affected at some level. Every town has people who are affected. We're just going to be in a pissing war with them about who's worse shaped than the rest. That makes no sense, and that is not going to help us. We've been able to move every year because of the way we proceeded with these communities in the first place. We took our licks the first time we raised this, but every year we negotiated and talked, and we moved forward. I think what Bob said and what AJ said was, we need to be firm about what our long-term goal is. Statutory method. We've realized at this point that the statutory method is the only method that works for us, and we have to move to it. But I think we got to play ball this year. We cannot try and go against the grain this year. I think it will make it much harder for us in the long term to deal with these other towns. One of the thoughts I've had just thinking about this in the last few weeks is, why not just give them a date? Let's say fiscal 24, statutory. You guys decide how we're going to get there. But in fiscal 24 or 25, we're only going to vote for the statutory method. You towns figure out how you want to ramp up to that. This year, we understand the difficulties. Remember, Amherst has already thrown out the first lob here. If you read the paper the other day, the finance director has already said that they're holding their budget firm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I thought I read in the paper. And they have no intention of paying any more towards the regional school this year than they did last year. Again, what I read from that article. So already the school budget is going to be funded lower than level service. It's already been decided by Amherst. Maybe we could scare them or negotiate with them in some way to get them to spend more. But I just think in this environment, nobody's going to benefit by, I don't think we're going to look good, and I don't think it's going to help us. And I would say, I agree with Bob. The first thing Bob said was we should stay firm on what we want to do. We should let them know we're going to stay firm on it. And even though we might settle for 45% this year, we will not settle for that in the long run. And I think it's time to draw a line in the sand. The whole point of this was to, when we go to statutory, Amherst picks up the majority of that difference. And so how we go is going to affect Amherst directly. We've brought them very far. We've brought them almost 50%. Now we're getting to the point where Amherst make that final step, especially when COVID ends and they get all those rents from all those new buildings as they get completed. The kids come back to school, the revenues come up from the restaurants and all the other businesses. So I'm opposed to being antagonistic this year on this issue, but I do think we need to be firm and let them know when all goes back to normal, we are going to go back to what we've been saying. And we shouldn't wait 5 more years. I really think it's gone too long at this point. That's my position.
Leslie.
I'll make this very brief. I don't think things are ever going to go back to normal. So I think we need to be prepared that things are not going to go back to normal, and we need to make the best decisions as we can as things play out. But people thinking that things are going to go back to normal, the economy has changed, structural changes across the board, politics are still divided. Things are not going to go back to normal. Normal is past tense in the United States of America.
Steve, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can't speak for Pelham, of course, but I have been privy, we've been meeting as Union 26, which is Pelham, the Amherst region, and the region as 3-pronged meetings pretty much since March. And you're going to hear from Pelham at that 4-town meeting that they are in big trouble because they lost 20 students from their elementary school, and the bulk of those was choice students, and so that's a lot of money. They're talking about they had to drop their preschool program or eliminate it, and they're talking about possibly not even being open next year. So I just want to let you know that you're going to hear a lot from Pelham on the 5th.
Thank you, Steve.
Do we have any sense of the numbers, the percent of, the classes that the changes for Shutesbury? Are we going to be static? It sounds like Pelham's census is really going to be going down with the region. We don't
That's a
have
good
any
question,
sense.
and I don't know if we would have that really. I'll probably find out on. That's a good question, maybe for the 4th, the meeting. Yeah.
What are our population trends doing? Are they going up in the region, or is Shutesbury's numbers?
Melissa, Lauren has an answer.
Oh, Lauren, I'm sorry.
Well,
Raise
no,
your hand.
I did, but I don't really have an answer because it's really in flux right now. So our numbers, the Shutesbury numbers are down, but when decisions change as far as being remote, being hybrid, going back and forth at the regional level, parents make different decisions. So the numbers continue to change.
Though we are having more people are moving into town. I mean, and I'm assuming there's a cohort of older people don't tend to retire in Shutesbury. Well, maybe maybe they do. I did.
Melissa, Steve has his hand up,
Steve?
Melissa.
Go ahead, Steve.
Unmute, Steve.
Yeah, so at the regional level, there's been a sharp drop off this year in the number of students. And we're hoping that the budget will be level funded as it was this year through, is it chapter 70? Because if it's not, then the region's gonna be in big trouble next year.
So I think we've come to what I've heard is it's hard to make a decision on a firm stance that's driving ourselves towards statutory at this point without much more information. And because it's a unique year, maybe staying at the current assessment method of 45% with 5-year rolling average. Is that a good summarization of what everybody's kind of said?
I don't support that personally. I support us going in there expecting to move closer to the statutory method and then being willing to listen to people when we get actual facts about the budget and about other considerations which might be reasonably come into play. But to throw up the white flag and sort of give up on the idea of doing statutory or moving significantly in that direction before we even learned anything or any facts whatsoever, I don't think that's responsible. You know, certainly Amherst is going to have some problems this year, but so will we. And let's not forget that, you know, this COVID thing has not really struck everybody equally. There's been a lot of unevenness in the way that it's affected people's lives. And there are people in this town that really could use a little break on their taxes this year. And we're going to have a significant rise in our tax rate next year because we all know that we had to put some free cash on it last year. I don't know what will happen this year, but I feel a very strong responsibility to try to do the best I can on the Finance Committee to keep taxes as low as we can reasonably keep them, considering all the uncertainty, which we all know about the future of the economic well-being of the people that pay to support our budget. So that's my position.
I don't think anybody disagrees that we want to get to the 100% 5-year rolling average. I think we're all in agreement. I think the disagreement is about, you know, how do we respond to what the others, you know, particularly Amherst needs. And I think we have to go in open to listening, really listening to what's going on for them, because we are part of a region.
I absolutely agree, April. I think we should be very well open and be willing to listen and to respond to factual presentations and act in good faith to whatever circumstances we're presented with. But we don't have any information right now. All we have is a general understanding. What we have is last year's meeting that ended with an understanding that we were going to go forward and we'll continue to move to statutory, which is a more equitable way to distribute costs.
But then a pandemic.
That's what we know.
Nobody expected this pandemic would,
of course,
gum up things.
Can't get any date, any actual facts. So let's just go in with that and listen. Be willing to listen to whatever's presented.
Absolutely, we have to listen.
Jay, I see your hand.
Yeah, just real briefly, I think that that it might not be necessary for us to have an official position that gets articulated at this next meeting, the December 5th meeting. And I don't disagree with several comments that have been made about how, you know, we're sort of discussing a strategy without actually even hearing from the other towns about what kinds of revenue hardships they're facing. So it's like we're just anticipating what we suspect is going to be stated at that meeting. So I mean, I guess what I would suggest is that you know, just internally, I think, you know, the position that I stated earlier, I mean, that's certainly how I'm sort of viewing it. I'm not suggesting that we have to say that out loud at the Four Towns meeting. And I think, you know, nevertheless, I think, you know, some of the details that have come up in this meeting from Steve and George, like about just kind of what the other towns are dealing with. It does kind of sound to me like the right decision is probably going to mean, for from my point of view, mean freezing for 1 year. But I'm not suggesting we have to say that at this December. I agree that that this is an opportunity for us to hear and listen to kind of what's going on in the other towns and what the region has to say about kind of what the financial position of the district is right now.
Thank you, Ajay. Susie?
I feel like it's important to know what information would come into our decision-making and ask all 4 towns to prepare some of that. I've thought about information like what percentage of the total budget is given over to education. And I think that will vary from town to town. I'd like to know what the tax rates are in each town. Some are closer to 25 per thousand than others. I'd like to know what the per pupil spending is per town, what kind of number that is. We might find ourselves paying a lot less per student than other towns, or no difference, I don't know. But I feel like if we're going to be looking at information, it would be helpful to make a specific request of information for the 4 towns to be prepared or presented at the 4-town meeting, so that we have a decision that's informed by information, not just positioning.
Jim Hemingway.
I think we need to go into this meeting with a position that's consistent with the ones that we've taken in the past. And if we do that, then we can follow April's suggestion and the suggestion of many others that we're there to listen to everyone and negotiate. But just to abandon the position that we've taken in the past, especially with all this uncertainty and no data, Susie, you just pointed out that we just don't know any of these figures whatsoever, I think would be a mistake. We should be consistent. We should go in there with a consistent position that that's based on what we have said in the past and have done in the past and the way we are moving and would like to move into the future. I don't think we have to speak aggressively about this. I think there's going to be so much to talk about having to do with COVID and what's going on in the state and everything else that much of the discussion that we're having right now is just going to be lost in the mix.
Rita?
I agree. I think we do need to be clear about the statutory method and moving towards it, but I don't think setting forth any percentages at this meeting makes sense, but that it's good to put it on the table and then see what kind of reaction we get.
George?
Will we be able to caucus at this meeting like we have in the meetings when I used to be on the committee? Is that going to be not doable because this is going to be a video meeting?
No, they can put you into, so hopefully the person that's hosting the meeting can put everybody into breakout rooms. So they can put Shutesbury into a breakout room and we can have a conversation and then bring us all back. Yep.
Are they planning
on that?
I don't know.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, ask you for the breakout rooms if they're going to utilize breakout rooms.
But usually that would happen at the second meeting. Normally we're really gathering information at this meeting.
I think it happened at both last year. Did it?
I think it happened at both in the years that I had attended as well.
Yeah.
In the later years. Yeah, because I was just thinking, everybody agrees we need to get more information. Everybody has a different idea of what we need, but we need more information. So I do think we need to listen and, and we do need to give the message, of course, the consistent message, but we have an opportunity. If we have the opportunity to caucus, then we should, at that point, we can decide how firm or which direction to push this. Is this year really an okay year to ask for an additional 10 or 15%? I think somebody suggested going to 60, but we do have to listen, I think. The first one, especially. The second one, we can maybe communicate them through different channels, what we might bring, or at the second one, drop our final decision. But I do think we need to listen. That's all. Sorry to be.
I don't disagree with you, George. I think listening is a great idea. We've done it well in the last couple of years. Does anybody else have any other comments that they'd like to raise? No? Okay. Oh,
yes,
I see Jim and Becky. So Becky first, and then Jim.
Oh, I'm first.
You're first.
My question is, should I post the meetings to be like a half hour early in case we do have new information before the meeting? We don't, if we don't have new information, we don't have to utilize that time, but do we want to do that? I guess we can't do that.
No, we technically could. You could have a Zoom meeting here for town.
Yeah.
And then we don't have a 5-minute break where we pop into the one for the region, if that's how you want to do it. So, give at least a 5 or 10 minute break between the two.
Do people think that is worth doing?
Yeah.
Sure.
Only if we think we're going to have information.
Well, we can always cancel it if we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So if information, we'll do that. Great, thank you.
And Becky, it might be a good idea to push them a little bit to get information out ahead of time so people can at least print it if they want to have it in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned, Melissa, the mess for us, the point for focus is listening, and I agree with that. But I think it would be 2 points that we don't miss the other point, and that is that we continue to set the tone that we are still committed to where we've been in our last meetings. And
I wasn't leaving that off. I just was
I thought that's what you meant, but I just wanted to make sure we weren't just.
No, I appreciate you.
Just going in there to listen. We are going to set some tone also.
Yeah. No, we should. Yeah, you're right. I wasn't ignoring that part.
Yeah.
I just have a procedural question. So from previous meetings, is the lead taken by one person, or the select board chair and the finance committee chair and school committee chair, or is it kind of a free-for-all when we're talking about this, when we talk about the assessment method?
It's been open. Anybody who wants to speak has spoken.
But I do think we have, in the planning sessions ahead of the meeting, we've typically chosen spokespeople. So
I think that would make sense.
If we're ready to do that tonight, or.
Hold on, I was just writing something down.
Last time we had a good cop, bad cop thing going, didn't
we? Did.
We know who the bad cop is, Bob. I would recommend that it be the chair of the different committees, just to simplify.
Well, I think it really depends who's most comfortable speaking. So if it is the chair, great. But I don't think anybody should be put under pressure, because Steve might have more information than Dan does. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Or someone might understand the assessment method much more than somebody else. Well, we know George has this down pat.
But I think in this case, it's really about what the position is when we're talking about the assessment method, rather than the mechanics of the assessment method.
I think that in the past, at least the first meeting is kind of an open meeting where a lot of people from different committees speak and sort of brainstorm, and then the second meeting is more of a serious negotiation.
Okay.
Where the positions kind of firm up a little bit, but I think that it would be good for people just to listen, as you say, to others who speak for their town, and then to have other people listen to us as well, as Jim pointed out, you know. So I don't see any reason why we don't have a position that's very firm.
Right.
We don't need a spokesman for our position since we don't have one, except that we want to mention our commitment to the statutory, and we're willing to listen to others.
Can somebody remind me, last year we did, I mean, I remember we had a set of bullet points that we developed as 3 committees. Was that was in advance of the February meeting, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was
the
after we
first-
had information.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
That was after we had more information.
Yes, gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I,
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
yeah, just a technical question on this meeting. I saw this message today from Amherst, was it Sasha, from the Four-Town Committee, or I'm not sure what her role is. But she was basically providing an update on the agenda. And I looked at the list of people that are invited, and it's for example, it's sent to the Shutesbury Finance Committee. I just want to make sure everybody on the Finance Committee is able to have access to this meeting. Is there something we need to do, Becky?
No, I think,
It's
hold on, let me
possible.
just.
It'll be posted.
The login is on the invitation.
Okay, so they don't allow, they allow anybody that logs in. You don't have to have a specific email address to log in.
No, but it is, the meeting is for town officials. They have, you know, they do not allow non-town officials to speak at these meetings because of the numbers are so large.
Okay, so as long as we have the login information, we should be able to participate.
Yes.
Yeah. But what about as far as moving, if there is discussion rooms or rooms, breakout rooms or whatever?
The
how do they
person,
find the right people, the right rooms?
the host most likely would be probably Doug or someone he designates, and they would know who's on the list for each one, if they're choosing to use the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
So they may not for the first meeting. We don't know. We don't know if that will happen, but they should be able to put us in rooms when we sign on. Maybe we put Shutesbury after our name so that they know we're for Shutesbury and they can slide us quickly in there as you register your name on when you enter into the room, into the meeting.
How about jerseys?
The jersey.
Could go in as the moose.
I'm sorry, Susie, I see your hand up and I just moved my screen. Go ahead.
Okay, so is, does Amherst, because they're the host, typically take minutes that can be distributed to us afterwards so that we have a record of what thoughts came through?
The region, it's the region, not Amherst, that may take minutes, but there were none taken at least 2 years ago when I tried to get backup.
Can we ask for that now?
Yeah.
Ask ahead of time so that they're planning to do it?
I assume this will also be recorded, right? The meeting will be recorded.
Yeah, it's usually on ACTV, which you can get online. Amherst TV.
Jim, I saw your hand again.
No, I
No?
think,
Okay.
I think it was answered. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Shall we adjourn our meeting and then meet back up a little bit, or Becky will send us all the invite for the pre-meeting to the December 4th?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming and sharing your thoughts and heading into another set of these meetings. I'm
Here
sure
we
we're going
go.
to have some fun.
We always do.
Good night, everybody.
Does the finance committee need to officially adjourn their meeting?
No, they're going to,
Okay.
Can we
We
stay
can
on
just
this
stay on this,
login?
right?
I think we can just stay here.
Yeah.
because-
Okay. Well, the select board maybe shall adjourn ours.
Yeah, I'll move for an adjournment.
Okay, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Farrell, I.
Stein, aye.
Thank you, O'Neill. I thank you, everybody. It was great to see you.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
You'll have a good evening.
Bye.
Select board.
Oh, I gotta go out to two of them. Hold on. Gotta figure that out.
Okay, are you ready to carry on with the Finance Committee?
Mhm.
We're going to go through the minutes. AJ sent us minutes earlier today from our last October 20 meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that. Has everybody had a chance to review? Do we want to spend a couple of minutes going through it?
No, I just got it tonight. I haven't had a chance to get to it. I've been
Okay.
working today.
So why don't we take a couple of minutes? George, why don't you just raise your hand when you're good for going through the minutes?
Well, yeah, all right, I'll be fast.
Pressure's on.
All the time. I'm good.
Is everybody else all set with reviewing? Are we ready to vote?
Yep.
Okay.
Arvanitis, aye.
Chartier,
Melody,
Chartier, aye. Sorry.
Groves, aye. Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, I. Okay. We have on our agenda state budget updates. Becky, do we have new information here as far as updated budget information as I catch you with your mouth full?
He's muted.
And you're also muted.
Double muted.
Well, that's good. You didn't see what was in my mouth anyway. Okay, so we got the updated house cherry sheet that I believe I forwarded to everyone, which is quite similar to the governor's with a few changes, a few increases. But until they, the Senate comes forward with theirs, we're still not certain. But basically, they're holding tight on the Chapter 70 and the lottery aid. Supposedly regional aid, transportation aid is up, and transportation costs are down. So we should be looking at some savings there. But last year they were minimal. I'm not sure what they're really going to turn out to be this year. Because I know the buses really have not been running steadily. So that's what impacts us on the cherry sheet. And again, they've got to solve this budget before they can work on the next one. And we're desperate for them to start working on the next one, but they still are trying to settle out all the COVID money. And that has not yet been resolved. That's the update I have. George, have you heard other things from the state?
No, I haven't been looking. I haven't been.
Okay.
paying attention. Haven't seen anything in the paper either.
Yeah, and I don't have any new news on the foundation budget. They took out information from people, but I haven't seen a report yet on that.
How long before we hear about the hold harmless?
That's part of the foundation budget. The Chapter 21 and all that is wrapped up together. And
We hear from what, George? What was
The hold harmless.
the whole what? I'm sorry.
Harmless.
The hold harmless provision, the one where they were going to take away the.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Because that's where Amherst can get in a real pickle if the hold harmless is removed, millions of dollars disappear. from the regional budget and the Amherst Elementary budget. And potentially it could impact Leverett and Pelham. I could be dead wrong, but I think there will be less negative impact on us. There might be some, but not to the same extent because of the difference on the wealth scale and income scale between.
And are you talking about for FY21? It could even hit this? No, that's only for FY22.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, I just want to make a very short point that the reason that we do score better on that test is because our demographics and our, our household income and property values, et cetera, all the things that they evaluate are much lower than Amherst, Pelham, or Leverett, which speaks to the fact that we need to take care of our taxpayers who are not as able to pay as taxpayers in those other towns. So yes, we care about everybody. We care about Amherst, Leverett, and Pelham, but we certainly have to care about our own taxpayers. And the reason that they score higher on that scale is because they are less able to pay than the other towns. That's why the statutory method was created.
Susie.
And as a result of scoring differently because of property values and income, Shutesbury gets significantly higher percentage of Chapter 70 aid. And that differential with us versus Pelham and Leverett and Amherst is part of the discussion that goes into how we figure out the assessment.
Exactly, Susie. And what we've done now up heretofore is we have given up the advantage we get from the statutory method and from this funding system mechanism. We've given it up voluntarily to the other towns, and we've actually not availed ourselves of it. And so we have to be aware of that. I mean, I hope everybody's aware this is what's going on. This is why we've been engaged in this discussion to get the statutory method approved by the other towns, even though it's by law, it would revert to that if we refuse to support the budget based on the voluntary method that we've entered into. But I just want to make the simple point that the reason that we score higher is that we're less able to pay. We're not as rich a town. That's really a simple fact.
And that's also, Bob, the argument that we've used in our annual discussions with the four towns, right? This is a big part of our discussion and our argument. This is.
Yes, and I just want to be sure that we all are on the same page, that we're supporting our taxpayers, because in fact, that's what those other towns do, is support their taxpayers when they are in our discussions.
Yeah.
And we all care about each other, of course, but we have a fundamental primary responsibility to our own taxpayers.
I'm not hearing any disagreements with that at all. And there's been suggestions of like white flags and abandoning positions. I haven't heard anybody argue that tonight. So just to be clear, I mean, I think the discussion was about, earlier was about what accommodations we might need to make for the, one specific year, but that, I think we all remain firmly committed to the idea that the statutory method is not only the most beneficial method for Shutesbury, but it's the fairest, most equitable method. And I think we're all in agreement on that.
We were benefiting from the 5-year rolling average for 10 years. And then the statutory method came along, and then things changed. Our demographics changed and everything changed. And for a year or two, it was, all right, let's see how it goes. It may swing back. And then we put together a committee and we realized it's not going to swing back. And now we know that it's going to be a long time before the statutory method is not the right method for our towns. One of the fears we had was that we would push for the statutory, we'd get it, and 2 years later, it wasn't the best method for us. So, that we've been down that road now, and we know that it is the best method for us. So everybody does agree. And that is the point of the statutory method. We benefit from Chapter 70 100% because it comes to the town for the elementary school. 100% for the elementary school, excuse me. We benefit because it comes straight to the town. The statutory method, it goes to the region, and then the region has this different way of divvying it up, and we lose our share of it. And so we stay firm with that. There's no question. The towns do use against us the fact that we get so much more elementary aid. elementary school aid. I know Leverett screams about it every time. We're getting over $400,000 more a year than they do. And yeah, there's no question. It's about the property values. It's about the income taxes. They've made the argument that there's this one property that skews it, but nobody believes it. We all know what Leverett community is like. And, you know, the wealth factor in Leverett is much higher than everybody else in the region. As far as I can tell, Pelham's pretty good too. The other thing they're going to use against us in negotiations, just understand, is their average single taxpayer bill is for a single family home in Amherst is $2,000 more a year than ours. In Leverett, it's what, 600,000? I mean, you've all heard me say this before. Pelham, it's 1,000. So they're going to use that against us too. So just consider that when we're having these conversations and these negotiations. Because our position is right. We deserve the money. The state is set a standard that they apply to 351 towns, and we're not benefiting to the full extent of that standard. I don't argue with that at all. I think we have to be firm about that. But I will say it again, I think this is the wrong year to be making strong arguments with the other towns.
Okay. Any other comments, inputs? State budget updates? Oh, Les.
Am I on mute or unmute?
We can hear you.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. This is a personal request. And it is also in the context of what George was just saying in the previous conversation with the Board of Selectmen. Again, personal question, just take it as that. Did I come on too heavy in my comments when I said that things are never going to be, quote, normal again?
Well, the normal is going to be different. It's going to be the new normal. You know, I think Amherst will have income much better than they're going to have in 2021 and 22. I think they will recover from it. Will they recover all the way? Maybe not. You know, one of the things is, I didn't take it personal if you're asking me. No, I didn't take it personal, Les. No, I think it was a good point. You're right. And when I use the term normal, what I should have said was their income is going to come back. It may not come back all the way. And we're lucky because we get most of our income from taxpayers, and all those homes are going to get taxed. Yeah, some people are going to suffer. There's no question. But for Amherst, there is this whole nother revenue source that has dried up. My point was it's going to come back. But no, not at all, Les. I'm happy to hear you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Becky, is there anything else you wanted to add regarding updates or?
I don't have any more on the state.
Okay. Okay, are we good with that topic? Ready to move on? Next, we have review assessors report on the final of this year's recap with DOR. A couple of us sat in on the assessors review earlier. See, Susie, myself, Becky was there. Becky, you sent us, I think just before the meeting, what Kevin presented. So I think we all have a copy of a 9-page document that I'm sure we've all digested. Maybe not.
And it is also available on the assessor's website.
Yeah.
It went up right at the time of the meeting. So if, Les, if you haven't seen it, you can get it there.
Thank you.
And so the purpose of the classification hearing is for the select board to vote on classes of property. The big question that they face every year is whether or not to split the tax rate into separate out residential from industrial and commercial. This year they did not recommend that be done. It's been an issue a number of years and has been rejected every year for a long time. The residential tax rate did see a little bit of growth in the industrial commercial base, which grew to 5.5% with the addition of the final half of the solar farm, which is a big deal. And the final tax rate that is projected to be set tomorrow when all the final documents are submitted, is an FY 2021 tax rate of $22.66, down $1.38 from last year's $24.04. 41 cents of that decrease was from a combination of things, including keeping the, absolutely no increase in the budget and having a decrease in the budget, as well as the 41 cents was that, and increased value of property. If you read through this document, you will see that the average sales are increasing for the last 2 years in a row, and it's anticipated that will continue into next year, which will again have a downward impact on our tax rate itself. Again, the tax rate is not the end all. It's a function of the levy and the budget. And when the levy goes up, the tax rate goes down. 97 cents of that decrease to the tax budget was the result of the $220,000 use of free cash that was 100% supported by all members of the Finance Committee and passed at town meeting. And so people will see an average, for an average home, it's over $300 reduction this year with the combination of both of them. So we're hoping that he put in some nice graphs where you can see what the rate would have been if it had stayed the same as last year at $6,020. But with the $1.38 reduction, it's $5,674. So it's a thoughtful document, and I hope you all will take some time to read through it.
Becky, may I ask a question about it?
Sure.
I see he's showing the FY21 property taxes on the average home value, $250,434. And FY20, it was $6,020, and it looks like it goes down to $5,675. So he's showing a $346 decrease for the average single family. To the right of that, there's something called FY21 tax rate with AMP pilot, and it goes down even lower. What's that about?
Okay, so what he did there is he participated in a meeting that the select board chair, Melissa Makepeace, and I had with the representative from AMP Solar, who is, I'm sure most of you have heard, there's been some efforts that are just in beginning stages to bring in new solar farms to Shutesbury. And during that meeting, the person threw out a number of what the town could expect to see in pilot money of $800,000. So he just included that reduction, that if you include an $800,000 addition in revenue to Shutesbury's revenue picture, to our budget picture, that's the impact it would have on the tax rate. Bob?
That's just all theoretical at this stage because we don't have a permitted project yet, right?
Correct. Totally theoretical. He was just trying to emphasize that if you have, if we do have increase in revenue from sources that potentially could be available, you could see a reduction in your tax rate.
A substantial
Susie?
reduction.
I wonder if we could have a discussion, or what the process would be for the FinCom to have a discussion around this idea of our thoughts on advocating or discussing a project like this. I don't know if the FinCom had a discussion before the planning board passed their bylaws, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't have a discussion that says our opinions on promoting or accepting or rejecting the idea that revenue could come from a solar project, especially as we see the numbers of the current solar project and how it affects our budget and how it affects our tax base. So is there a role for the finance committee to discuss it? What would that process look like? And at what point would we come to some sort of summary of our discussion and offer that to, I would say, the select board, because they're part of the process.
Susie, I just want to be clear that the role of the finance committee is to weigh in on financial matters in town. So that's one thing, and the role is not to, I think the select board's role is to negotiate a pilot if a project is being talked about. The planning board's role is to permit a project. So I don't think any, educating people or educating ourselves on what the impact is one issue. Promoting a project is another issue. And I don't see that in the statutory roles of the committees, but I don't know.
Well, anytime there's an ad hoc activity, or, we have representation on a lot of committees, it would be in our best interest if such an effort was happening to have at least one person involved. There is certainly a benefit in offering decreased taxes to a long-term property taxpayer if that means not having them build it in Wendell or Leverett. So, I like that idea.
I do want to mention that the select board a couple of meetings ago decided to pursue a committee that will be a committee that looks at economic issues, financial policy, potential revenue, economic development issues, as well as educating townspeople on municipal finance. Rita's working on the charge for that committee. And so an issue like this, a revenue generating project, could fall under that new committee as the select board moves forward in putting it together. Mike?
Mike?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it seems to me that, you're talking about stepping kind of way out of bounds of what the finance committee should be doing. It's basically someone who's coming to town with a commercial project is probably doing it on private land, and it's only needing to get acceptance of that, or not acceptance of it, but just make sure that it complies with all planning board and zoning requirements and everything. And for finance committee to be, weighing in on whether this is a good idea or not, it seems very out of line that they would be doing that. So it's I think there's a lot of other important things that the finance committee should be looking at other than something like that.
Yeah, Becky, where does this committee that looks like that's currently in formation or concept phase or mode, when do you think that would roll out? Or
I'm hoping by the first of the year, if not sooner. That's my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I
that
think
would be a cross committee type of a representation that would be on that. Yeah. Okay.
they're looking to have people from different areas,
Yep.
but mostly financial, because Mike's comment that it for the FinCom to weigh in, it is required that the Finance Committee does weigh in on things that are of financial nature, like big expenses. And when you're talking about potentially increasing the revenue of the town to almost $1 million, it would be something for the Finance Committee to be aware of and think through.
Rita's leading that charge on that concept. This.
Well, Melissa and Rita were both working. We're both talking about it. So.
Real quick, Becky, I don't know who's the finance committee supposed to weigh in this to. I mean, yeah, there's $1 million project coming into town that will generate a lot of revenue, but who are you trying to convince? I mean,
I'm not saying we're trying to convince. It's an issue that the town, the Finance Committee would need to be aware of and have an understanding of what the impact would be to the town if it went forward.
well, yeah, that's a lot different than what you were saying, but yes, that makes sense, of course, to understand
That's
how
what I'm
much
trying to say.
how much that's going to generate in increased revenue.
Yeah. Les?
Becky, how public is this process? I understand that it's in its early stages, but how public is that?
People are working on it when outside of a meeting at this point. We haven't brought it, the draft isn't finished to bring back to the select board. And when it is finished, she will bring it back to the select board. I'm also working on it with her. So it's not an issue of not being public. It's an issue of not having it, the work done.
To make it public.
To make it public, because there's some, we're still working on it.
They haven't submitted an application, is that what you're saying?
What?
They have not submitted an application for a permit.
No, we're talking about two different things, Bob.
Oh, I thought
Yeah, Les was talking about the committee charge.
Oh, I see.
And,
okay, sorry.
And you are correct. An application for a permit has not been received.
Right.
And they haven't even finished the NRADs with the Conservation Commission. Those are just beginning.
Those are the preliminaries.
No, they're separate. They're preliminary, but the Concom has a separate process from the planning board's process.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the assessor's report? We move on to expense report review. Becky, I think the last one I have is the one that was printed out or as of October 15. Does that sound right? Should I have a newer one than that, or is that?
Does anybody have 11:30?
11:30? No.
No.
That hasn't arrived yet.
No.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Okay. Let me get you 11:30.
Yeah, the ones that I think we have most recently are 10/31, and it was printed on it was run on 10/15. Yeah, you sent it to us on October 20.
Okay. So that being the case, do you want me to send it out now, or let's go through the expense report at the next meeting?
Can I make a suggestion, please? I'd like to see these expense reports ahead of the meeting. I find it hard to review a document on the spot in real time, which is what happened last time. So could we just get this report shipped to us by email and then discuss it at our next meeting so that we'll have time to look at it and make some sense of it? Does that make sense to the other members of the committee?
Yeah, I would suggest, go ahead, Becky, when you have a chance, send us whatever most recent version you have.
Okay.
And yeah, I agree. Anything we can have in advance of the meeting helps us do a little homework so that we can be ready. But in the meantime, Becky, is there anything else? Is there anything that stands out to you with the most recent run that we should be thinking about?
I think health insurance is running tight. I think the fuel line is low. But I'm sorry, I don't have it right here either.
How about the elementary school?
Let me just send it out, George.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with Bob. And I'm going to direct this at AJ. It would be great if we could get the minutes like a day before the meeting, the night before the meeting, anything that we can get a day before. A lot of things show up in my inbox at 4:00 in the afternoon. And, I'm racing from work to finance committee. So I never really get a chance to look at things in that short period of time. So anybody who can, hey, Jay, I mean that in good fun, of course, but, anything that we can get in advance will always be helpful.
Absolutely.
The weekends are great. I mean, the weekends I have the time to really look at these things. Like we're going to talk about Bob's issue with the choice money. And so, I can really delve into that stuff.
Well, the other issue on the expense report, Becky, these aren't running all the time. These are maybe help us all understand the logistics that go behind running an expense report. And, when they run, and then maybe once they do run, if we could have access to them somewhat shortly after that point in time, that might be the best. So not so much as it's a day or two before meeting, but that we get them after they've been processed and run.
Yeah, and I think I typically, whenever I see them, I send them straight out, which has happened frequently, and then people don't have them by the time we get to the meeting because they're buried. So I'm wondering if to solve that, like if the weekend before a meeting, if I can resend the latest one or try to put it in a packet or something to make sure you have the most recent one. That might help.
Just one opinion. I just think once you have the newest, if you get them to us and then we in our leisure can start going through them. And I think it's up to us to dig through our email and make sure we're up to date with the latest version. Just my opinion.
And what is the timing? It has to do with when Gail Weiss is in to do this. Is that how it works? And she's on a certain schedule of coming in?
Which has been all upside down for the past month because Gail took a trip to Florida and then she had to take a COVID test and then she had to be quarantined. And so she's been sneaking in when other people aren't here. So it hasn't been happening for the past month on her regular schedule. So I just sent out the latest one she sent me and I'll see if it's the one before that is available as well.
But what triggers her to run a report, Becky?
Whenever she closes the warrant and closes everything to do with the warrant. Like the one that I have right here is 11/6. But I just sent you the one she just sent me, which is 2 weeks later. Every 2 weeks, the assessor, I'm sorry, the treasurer and the accountant work together to run the warrant. And then the select board signs it and then they distribute the checks about a week later after all the signatures are complete and done. So it's about every 2 weeks. There's a new warrant.
So there's a pretty regular schedule then for running these reports, these expense reports.
But it can be thrown off by up to 5 days, depending on the treasurer, the treasurer, the select board. If the select board doesn't come in and sign, there's 2 or 3 things that can throw it off for about 5 days. So it's not every Thursday. Typically, it's on a Thursday when she completes.
Yes, I guess, again, my suggestion would be that whenever these do become available, whenever they are published, that we on the finance committee get a copy.
So the elementary school budget as of 11/6, which was the end of October, basically was at 21.75%. So it's low.
25.5 on the one dated 11/15.
Yeah. Yeah, which one are you looking at, Becky?
I was looking at the physical copy of 11/6, but I just sent everyone 11/15.
Yeah, that's what I got up here.
Okay, so it's bumped up to 25.5 on the 11/15 version.
Pretty much on track.
It's not, the school building has been open for quite a while. The SPED students and some other students have been in the building with teachers, and they're gearing up for December 7th, reopening of a hybrid mixture of putting, having children in the school. Not all the children are returning. So there's this, the teachers are required to handle the online remote students at the same time. And they're trying to figure out ways to do that. If they run it live, if there's cameras on the teacher while she's teaching the group that's in the classroom, the students that are remote don't get the same attention. So they're trying to integrate support staff into working with the remote students. But the hybrid model is what's been adopted, and it's complicated to make it effective. But as Susie pointed out earlier, I'm not sure if it was in this meeting, the preschool, is it preschool? Only the 4-year-olds, the preschool through first grade are returning on December 7th. In the beginning of January, the 5th and 6th graders are returning, and then the 3rd and 4th graders are returning in the beginning of February.
It's kindergarten through 2nd that are starting.
Okay, that makes more sense. I didn't think it was preschool. Thank you.
5th and 6th start on January 20th.
Yeah.
And then February is 3rd and 4th grade. I can't remember the exact date.
And one of the things that's going on is it's not really possible to offer 2 options at the same time, in class and remote, at the same way they're doing remote now. So the kids that are coming in will be coming in from 8:30 to just before lunch, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or maybe 5. And then they go home, and then there's a remote part. So the kids that are not coming to school in the hybrid model because the parents don't feel that's a good place to put their kids, they're getting sort of an adjusted remote for the morning, and then the teachers will teach in the afternoon. And you can imagine how hard it is to try to manage all of that. And the fact that the school budget is staying within bounds, even while it's very demanding on the administration to figure this out, and the teachers to carry it off, and the parents to handle it, it's a big hard year, and it's easy to not understand the extent of it. So here we are trying to do a hybrid model, and manage some remote in the afternoon for kids that aren't coming in for the hybrid, and see how it all pulls together. And they have to see how the COVID infection rates manage to weather it. One of the reasons they're not starting till December 7th for the K-1-2s is to wait till the Thanksgiving holiday has passed and the infection danger from that event is gone.
So we're going to review the budget in the next meeting. Is that what we decided? the spending.
That makes sense.
It looks like we're on to school choice funding.
Yeah, if we're done with expense report, if everybody's good with the expense report. School choice funding?
Okay, should I speak now? Is that okay? All right. Several years ago, I think maybe the first year that I was on the finance committee, I recall we were building the budget that year, and we had included, it was the first year that school choice was introduced to Shutesbury. And I think that, I don't know what it was that year, but say it was $10,000 or something that, and we had included it in the budget on the revenue side for the school. And we were instructed by you, Becky, that we couldn't do that, that it was against the rules. And we had a big discussion about it. It seemed nonsensical that it wouldn't be included as part of their revenue to me. But we ended up just taking it out. I think I discussed it, I brought this issue up again last year, but any case, I did look it up, and then I managed to contact John Trickey and found out that our neighbors here, Leverett and Pelham, both do what I propose to do, that is include the school choice revenue on the revenue side for the school when they're building the budget for the town. And I then went further and looked into the Regulations Department of Education and saw the regulations, and I sent the copy to you all, members of the Finance Committee, of those documents. So to me, it's just a simple issue. This is money that should be counted as revenue, not that it affects, that we have any control over it, because we don't. That there are regulations about how that money could and couldn't be spent is also true, which I don't dispute. But it's also true for any grant that might be granted to the school that might be for a specific purpose. We don't have control over that money but it's still counted as revenue when we budget the school. So it seems to me a rather simple matter to correct this and to properly account for the school's budget by including that as a revenue.
Can I just ask a quick question? Like, what's the sort of big picture implication here? And this just a simple sort of accounting method issue, or do you have a sort of broader concern about what the implications of how we've been treating this in the past is for our budgets?
Well, let me just go back to where the first year that we dealt with this, which was a year when the school made a request to the town that we processed on the Finance Committee for X number of dollars. I believe that we agreed to support the request, but we did count the school choice money against the request in terms of what we would provide out of our levy to the school, because we subtracted the other revenue sources that the school had available before the bottom line was calculated in terms of what we would provide from taxpayers. So I just think that's the right way to do bookkeeping. It's the right way to represent the finances of the school. And it doesn't, I'm not making any suggestion of whether we should or shouldn't support any request of the school. I just think this is the right way for us to look at the budget when we examine the budget for the school. How much money are they getting that we don't have to provide before we vote on how much we can afford to provide that year. That's all. So yeah, I think this was a mistake to take it out of the budget, and it should be put back in.
Becky.
Okay, so Bob, I just want to clear up one thing that I'm confused about what you're saying. When we talk about the Finance Committee budget, we're looking at our revenue pages, and we have listed line 28 school choice receiving tuition, not included in total. So for last year, the choice money was projected, well, for this year, it was projected to be $58,800. So we made sure that it was available information, that the town knows that school choice funds are coming in for $58,000. The document that you sent us, this document clearly states that the authority over the funds belongs strictly to the schools. That's why we cannot count their money, their fund of school choice as revenue for our budget. That's the disagreement I had with you before. What you sent to us were copies of school budgets. School budgets like Leverett, where they decided how much money. This is a simple one. It's a simple one because Leverett has less money. But Leverett's spreadsheet shows, their budget shows how much money they have utilized in different years, how much choice money they've built into their budget. These numbers are in the school budget because they were voted by the school committee to be placed in their budget. No one else has any authority to vote or recommend those dollars be put in the school budget or used in the school budget. Only the school committee.
Just so maybe we're speaking the same language here. 2 points. One, when we first raised it, the issue was first raised to my knowledge, it was the first year I was on the finance committee. We got a request from the school for a budget for a certain amount of money. And they presented the figures to us. Such and such for salaries, such and such for building maintenance, such and such for fuel, so on and so forth. We didn't dicker with them about any of the elements or components of their budget. We took the revenue that they received from Chapter 70 and other sources that were available to them, including some grants. And we also included, and I'm sure you remember this, George and Jim, we included as revenue the school choice, which I think that year was 2 students, it was $10,000, something like that. A little bit of money, but we deducted it from the total budget, and we ended up with an amount of money that we would then recommended that we provide, the town meeting provide the school. So, but we were told then, and this is why I disagreed with you that year, that we were told that we couldn't deduct that from their budget request, that money was just a fund that they could avail themselves of. I never thought that the finance committee has any control over how the school spends their money. We give them a lump sum of money. They have complete control over how they spend it. They have contracts and so forth, and they have fixed costs, but we don't go over their budget line by line and then dispute it. We just we approve their budget at a certain level, and then they control it. And that'd be the case whether the school choice money was involved or not. So the school choice money is now getting to be a significant part of their revenue stream. So it's more important now than it was before for them to present a budget to the town and to the taxpayer and say, this is how much money we're going to spend this year, total of 1.2 or whatever it is, millions of dollars. And we approve it or not. And but we need to know how much money they're getting from other sources besides the taxpayer to understand exactly what we have to provide. So I don't see there's anything mysterious about this. It's not like, the town of Leverett, the town of Pelham build a school budget the way they don't build it piece by piece. They approve it or not approve what is presented to them. And they consider the choice money to be part of the budget, of the school budget. And it hasn't been presented that way.
When you say part of the budget, you mean reductions to their spending?
I mean reductions to their request from dollars from the tax base.
Okay,
because of their revenue.
Bob, you're not getting the main point. The school committee, there's 2 points. You can sit there and say, well, I know they have $50,000 of school choice and they want, they have an increase in their budget of $60,000. So the finance committee could say, well, we can only afford to give you $40,000. You can say that. But if you say you have to use your school choice money to make up the difference, then you're in hot water. You cannot do that. You can have the knowledge of their amount. The numbers that are being put forward in the school budgets are being done so by the school committee after they determined how they were going to build their budgets in working with the finance committee. You can't tell them that they have to use that money. That's the difference. You can't tell them that they have to put those funds there. The reason Leverett and Pelham now have them in their budget is they've raised significant amounts of money. Pelham has a balance of $400,000 or $500,000, despite putting $300,000 or $400,000 against the budget every year. They have 60 school choice kids. So
Well, they had.
So they're operating on that, but it's how the relationship is. So if the finance committee wants to talk about using choice money, or say, you know, you got to be diplomatic on how you bring it up, because they have full statutory authority on how to use it. So you can suggest it, and it depends on, you know, you can suggest it and you can say that you're going to give them less, but you can't tell them to put it in their budget.
One second, Susie.
Do we know if the school committee, in drawing up their budget, has considered this issue and have had a recommendation from the finance committee? But again, it's still their creation of the budget. And so the papers that we received about Pelham and Leverett are not from the town budget. They're from the school budget. It's from the school's agreement. And
these are all school budgets.
Right. So do we want to decide if we want to make that a request to the school when they're creating their budget, and then they get to decide? And the other piece is it's the significance of what portion it is in Pelham and Leverett is part of how it might be different for Shutesbury. And I do know both towns have struggled when people stop choosing to go there. It creams their budget. And so I don't think Shutesbury wants to particularly be in that situation. And with the COVID year, people choosing in and out of the school is chaotic right now. So how much you could say, I'm going to get this revenue, I don't know if it's a steady number at all for Shutesbury.
But you can look at it, it's on the budget sheet. I mean, your last budget.
My last budget.
The numbers of how much money the school received in choice funds.
Right.
We have from 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Right. But I don't know the history to know what the school committee has considered and why they made the choices they did, if it's not currently included in their line revenue for their budget.
Are you talking about Shutesbury or a different school?
Shutesbury.
Shutesbury got its first choice funds, I think, in 2018.
Yeah, it didn't choose to go down that road, and it very much, and it until recently. And I believe their policy is to not be on that road because other towns have had such a trouble. Once those kids graduate or work, the parents put their kids somewhere else. You don't want to build your budget on sand, and that's a sandy base.
I just want to say, I agree with you, Susie. I don't support school choice. I think it's wrong for a number of reasons. It was presented to me as a short-term way to handle small class sizes, which would be likely to change in the near future. But I see what's happened in Pelham, and I see what's happened in other towns where they get addicted to this revenue source. But that's not the issue here. All I'm saying is if you get the revenue, count it. It's counted. Its revenue goes to the school. It should be counted against their request. Whatever the request is, I'm not talking about whether the request is good, bad, or indifferent. It's simply decent, reasonable accounting to say this is a source of revenue that you have this year. And so whatever your request is, we were going to apply that on the revenue side before we provide you with whatever you need. So we're not saying what to do with it. We're not telling you, we don't have any control whatsoever over their budget, over how they spend money. So that's not the issue. The issue is just simply sound accounting and accountability.
Becky,
the point is, you can't put it against their budget. They have to make that decision. Otherwise, it stays in a fund and doesn't go in their budget. That's their decision to make. It is not the finance committee's decision. But that doesn't mean that the finance committee can't say, well, it looks like, choice money seems to be piling up a little bit and we've got a problem. Maybe you could think about using that. And I will bet you anything that they will bring it forward before you do, because they are not, they did everything to keep their budget low last year and will likely do it again. And they were able to do it last year because of rural aid. And they're uncertain if that's coming in again. So I think it's, it's something to note, but it's not something you can tell them to do. And that sounds to me that you keep going back, even though you're saying you have no authority over it, but we can't tell them what to do. You have to negotiate it.
Let's see here. Well, I just want to read you a very short quote that I redlighted on the document I got from the state. It says, the appropriating body, however, may take into account the availability of school choice revenues and other special revenues in deciding how much to appropriate above the net school spending requirement. That's all I'm saying. It's a direct quote from the state document. That's all I'm saying. We should take it into consideration and we should account for it.
When you say we should account for it, we already do. We already list it so that it's public information. But when you talk about accounting and accounting for it, you quickly go onto their books, and we can't go there.
Well, what I shared with you from Leverett and Pelham was the town budget for last year. So
No.
that was it. Yes,
No.
I did.
No,
That's
this-
what I asked them to provide me with.
No, that's not what they sent you. This is the Pelham Elementary School budget, and this is the Leverett
Yeah.
budget that was done by Bruce Turner. So
Well-
that's probably the point of confusion.
I don't know if
That
it's-
you asked for one and you didn't get it.
yeah, Mike,
So I'm just a little confused here. So the way I understand this is if the school budget is like $1.5 million, the town goes, okay, fine, we're going to give you $1.5 million. And then they get $50,000 from school choice. They end up with 1.5 million plus $50,000. Is that correct?
Yes, in a separate fund. It would go into their choice fund, which is a trust fund, I think.
And does not need to be spent in the year it's received.
I'm sorry?
And does not need to be spent in the year it's received.
Correct. And that's why they've built up a little bit. They had 28,000 the first year. They have not spending it all. They've spent their time the school committee has worked on a policy of how to spend it and where it should be applied. I think last year it was the use of school choice, not last year, the year before, when they were coming up short. They did use some of their choice funds to fill that hole. So these are funds that they are very aware of, that they have been trying to use appropriately.
Well, that doesn't seem like that's fair to the taxpayers. I mean, as a taxpayer, if the school says we need $1.5 million to run the school, and then they get extra money and they go, oh, well, thanks taxpayer, but we're just gonna keep that in a fund for ourselves to do whatever we want with it. That doesn't seem very fair to me as a taxpayer. I think it should be whatever they need should include whatever they're getting from all revenue sources.
The reason, what I have read about school choice and how it was created by the state, it was created as a fund, as an incentive to have schools accept students from other areas that might want a different school experience. And so the incentive was to create the trust funds for these monies to go into, so that they could use them either to augment specific programs or do things that their normal budget doesn't pay for. And then there's a bunch of language about net school spending, and that a town has to, you can't have any school choice funds used to get you up to net school spending. Net school spending is the amount of money the town is required to put towards the school, and it can't be subsidized by these funds. But it was originally done as an incentive to the schools, and it wasn't done to offset the budgets of the schools. But but when you get in a situation like Pelham, where 60 of your kids out of 100 are coming through choice money, they have to use most of their money to fund their school, just to keep the doors open.
Just one thing to show everybody understands it. I don't know what the numbers are. Like Susie, I don't know the exact number, but I would say that it probably costs us about $25,000 per student to educate our children, certainly north of 17. So if you total up all the cost of the maintenance of the building and the plowing and the heat and all the salaries, $5,000 is nothing. It's absolutely, it's a pittance. And it's not a good way to fund our education. It doesn't represent anywhere near the cost. And it's not a good long-term solution to dwindling. That's what Pelham's made a huge mistake. They're now addicted to this choice money, and they're subsidizing these students in a big way. And also, frankly, they're poaching them from other towns, which need those students to get their aid. So they still get some of the Chapter 78, the other towns, that is, but they need to fill their classrooms too. So it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing long-term for the town.
Yep.
But I was talking about the simple matter of accounting for the choice money as part of the revenue stream to the school. No different than the other grant, and many of other grants are rolled over year to year as well. So they don't. The school has total control of the money. I understand that part, Becky.
Susie.
I would propose that we ask the school committee, excuse me, how they're doing on their plan around school choice, because they are not oblivious to thinking about this. They're working on it. And I think it's also been a chaotic year because of COVID as to what those choice kids are. And because it is their trust fund to decide how to spend, we can keep informed about how much money is in that. I'd also want to point out that at the end of last year, the school sent back some money that was unspent, and they have also dealt with expenses that weren't anticipated. And I don't know if some of that comes out of the school choice money to cover stuff, and those expenses didn't come back to us. So I feel like it's a organic process. We can ask for more information, and it's clear that the school committee has the purview when they draw up their budget to show what money they're using, and we can share that information and any policy that they come concerning choice.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to apologize here because I've got getting texts from my plumber who's installing a heat pump right now and needs me to go look at it. So with him, so I got to go outside and see him. I may come back in a few minutes. I expect I will, but I've got to go out to see the plumber right now. Okay, I apologize for leaving. And I don't know what we're going to do on this issue, whether I didn't propose that we do, but I think when we build the budget, we should be aware of this issue and we should consider it. And of course, talk to the school about it and the school committee about it. But I've got to leave it there for now. I apologize. Okay.
Bye, Bob.
Bye.
Good luck.
Does, Becky, does Leverett and Pelham treat the money in the way that you've described? That is to say, they put it into what they call sort of a trust fund. Is that the way they handle it?
Yes, it's required by state law. They would fail an audit and have hell to pay if they didn't. It's in DOR monitors the school choice funds, and they are handled that way in both Pelham and Leverett. That's why, yeah, the budgets that Bob sent are from their school budgets.
So when I was looking at the Leverett budget, it looks like what they did was they calculated their expenses like we do, and then they take a credit for all the grant money and the different funds that come in.
Yeah.
They get applied to that like we do. And then what's left over is what we budget.
Yeah.
But it looked to me like Leverett also had a line for school choice funds.
They
So
did.
they decided that they would use a portion of their funds to fund their budget and request a lower amount. I'm just trying to understand how a town can do it. So
Yep.
if we chose to take next year a certain portion of the funds that they've accumulated, we could ask them to lower their budget requests from the town by that amount, or they could propose to lower their budget requests to the
And
town.
I would, because of the lawsuits that have predated our conversation tonight, I would recommend being very diplomatic about bringing that up. Leverett, I think, they have found that this source of revenue to be very unpredictable. And then they're in a pickle because,
Okay,
like,
Becky, I'm not proposing that we ask them to do that. I'm just saying a school committee could present a budget that way.
the school committee can choose to do that.
Yes, so I just want to understand that, make sure that that's really what we're talking about. For me, though, I would say, I think it is important to get their policy and to find out what they plan on doing, what the triggers are for moving money, what the triggers are for not moving money, whatever policies they're going to establish. To me, having a little money on the side for SPED, when the big SPED bills come along, and being able to tap this money when we get that $40,000 a year kid that's going to be in the school for 3 years and they've built up a fair amount of money, that's the thing that can keep our budget requests from the school fairly flat year to year, as opposed to the wild fluctuations that we've seen in the past. So
And
just a suggestion for policy.
yeah, well, they've been working on that. They're very mindful of their small little pot of money. It's less than 5% of their budget. And it's something that they've been, trying to be very careful with and juggling all the COVID expenses and everything else. So yes, we've worked to make sure that everybody is aware school choice funds have started to flow into Shutesbury. There's a small pot of money. The parties that are responsible for that money are the school committee, the same people that put together the budget. So it's very, you might start seeing a small line, especially if they lose the rural aid, because they've already inserted, they've got that $30,000 piece that they are built into their budget. And if rural aid doesn't come through, the only other source they have would be the choice funds. And then they might not have, the number of choice kids could drop off dramatically, but we do know that teachers have designated the students that when they bring their own children to the school are choice. So they'll probably continue to be a small number. But yes, George, that's how it works. But I just want to make sure we're clear. You can't build it in. We can talk to them when they build it in, and if it's not there, you can ask about it. But diplomatically, so we don't
Yeah,
have
sure. Depends on the time of day and it depends on the day.
Yeah.
How diplomatic we can be.
And when does the school proposed school budget generally come out? What's the season for that?
The school budget, it's
I mean-
usually, there's, well, a typical year, they start in November and December, and then they present it to us in January. I mean, present to the finance committee usually.
Well, Susie, have they been talking about it in your meetings?
Not in the meetings I was at. I think they've actually done the, what do you call it? Union 28 budget. I think that has been discussed, but I don't think I have heard them. And they're going to meet this coming Thursday. So I expect to be hearing something.
Good, good. Yeah, and we meet with them in the first week of January, right? That's when we're going to see their budget officially.
Yep.
I was gonna see if it's on their agenda. But too many papers.
It's nice Bob left his computer on so we can admire his beautiful fireplace.
This plumber works at 8:30 on a Tuesday night, huh?
Yep.
Out in the dark.
Yeah.
How do we want to seal this up, or do we want to seal this up?
I can see from the agenda that's on Thursday's meeting, they'll have a Union 28 report, including budget and personnel. But I don't see one. And I know that they had an executive session meeting on Monday, which I think was for the contract negotiations. But I don't see anything on this new agenda that's about the FY22 proposed budget. But again, all towns and all groups are wrestling with trying to get through this COVID year. So it's not a surprise that it might be delayed.
Susie, as the FinCom rep on the school committee, when the time's appropriate, could you just relay our interest in more information about their school choice plans?
And the only other financial thing I heard at the last meeting was their desperation to get a roof, and and whatever else is out for capital projects, they want the roof to be number one.
It's gotta be number one.
We didn't disagree, but we're probably not that much closer to resolving the roof funding.
That's crazy. This has been going on for way too long.
No, we're moving forward. We're getting the engineering quote out, and the funding for the roof is gonna have to be a town meeting vote. And you guys will be deciding that, discussing it as soon as we get bids back to figure out how much, how significant it is gonna be.
That wouldn't have to wait for annual town meeting. That could be a separate meeting.
It could be.
It'll probably land that way anyways, though. It'll probably be April by the time it all gets figured out, right?
Yeah, you can't build till spring anyway.
Becky, when do we get bids for the culvert on Locks Pond Road? When do they start coming in?
The proposal isn't written yet. So I imagine it's gonna be February. It'll go out in February, early February, and we'll have them by March.
Mhm.
That's also a summer project.
Yep, that's going to be done in July of next year.
Yep. Okay.
Becky, I had on my calendar that we were going to meet with the highway group department tonight for budget.
You did?
What's that?
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't have that. Was that on the agenda?
It was not on the agenda, but it was on our calendar.
Okay, I apologize. What happened was, I discovered Jim hadn't posted the agenda close to the deadline to post. And so I did the agenda and I failed to include that. So we're gonna have to reschedule him. That's my fault.
Okay.
I thought you caught the other omission, but we didn't catch that one.
Yeah.
We've got police on December 1st, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then the fire chief 2 weeks later.
We try to squeeze highway in December 1st
That's the police.
with the police.
It's police and assessor. I don't know if the assessor time would take much up. We also have an open date of December 29th, no schedule.
That's because nobody's gonna come.
Nobody's going anywhere.
Could we add, would he have enough? Would the first work? The assessor shouldn't take too much time, right?
Right. So let's try to get highway in on the 1st because it might end up on the 29th. If it starts snowing, we can't catch them. So
The assessor is also on January 26th. Is that because there's usually 2 meetings required for that?
I'm not looking at the schedule. He shouldn't need 2 meetings, no.
Yeah, I see that.
So January 26th, we have the assessor and collector.
Yeah, so maybe just cross off the assessor for the 1st.
Yep.
And then add highway.
Yep.
For the 1st.
Yep. Sounds perfect. Thank you, AJ.
Yep.
And Jim.
Okay. Committee reports, anybody? Maybe Susie, do you have anything else on school? You've talked quite a bit about school. Is there anything else from the school side that we should cover?
No, I don't. I think that the issues around running a hybrid model dominated the last meeting. And I could maybe ask them when they think they're going to put the FY22 budget on their agenda. I could find out if they have a plan, but it's not on the November 19th meeting. And they did agree that the hybrid model and remote education and COVID would need more review, and they may end up meeting more often than once a month. But they don't have another date on this agenda, so I know they're meeting November 19th, and then I assume their next meeting will be the 17th of December.
All right. Any other committee reports? Capital and capital planning?
Well, we're not meeting till what, 2 weeks from now, AJ?
Yeah, that's right.
So we don't have anything to report. We really haven't, only had a perfunctory meeting to begin the season, and that's it. So yeah, we're not going to have any report till after that meeting, which would be, it should be coming up by the end of before the, oh, it's just the beginning of December, if I recall correctly. Our first meeting, our first real meeting.
And the personnel board meeting is Thursday.
This coming Thursday.
Yep.
And we're meeting the building committee tomorrow.
Mel, you be there for that, for personnel?
Hmm?
How about a broadband? Is anything new, Jim?
No, not much of anything. That storm we had.
Which one? We've had a lot of them.
Well, the one, I'm thinking of the one that we had Sunday night that took out everybody who was, everybody in the northern part of Shutesbury was watching the Patriots game, was very disappointed because during the third quarter, our power went out, and miraculously, and I mean, I was watching the storm. It was just, I was watching the storm outside just as the power went out, and I'm amazed, but we haven't had any reports of fiber damage, although I think others towns did not fare as well as we did. So, but there's not a great deal other than that to report.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
The fire chief reported 1 tree went down in Shutesbury in that storm, and that was it. And all the outages on the northern part of town were caused by tree damage in Wendell.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we, as you know, we get our power here on Locks Pond Road, at least up until my place, and Lake Wyola. It all comes from the north. It doesn't come from Pratt Corner Road because the dividing line is just a little bit south of my driveway at around 300 Locks Pond Road. So that's the big dividing line right there. And we all got shut down Sunday night to everybody in Wendell, New Salem, and Lake Wyola, Shutesbury. So we were lucky that there was so little damage here. Although I know that there was an outage in West Pelham Road area that affected 16 people. But apart from that, we sustained really very little damage considering the violence of the storm. We were lucky.
All the previous storms took out all the weak trees.
Yeah.
At some point, it's got to catch, we got to benefit from this.
Yes, well, I would say if I had to predict that Montague Road is, if you drive down Montague Road, that's a very tree road, that with stuff that's growing right up to the road's edge. And that's where all the trouble has been, both for Leverett and Studleyville Road and Leverett, of course, but that's where all the trouble has been for many years, are big trees coming down and causing very expensive damage. And that's where we've spent most of our money on repairs this year, has been on Montague Road.
Yeah.
Anything else, committees? I think that's all we have for agenda items. The next meeting we have scheduled is
Number one.
Number 1?
we're okay until December 1 without a meeting? We should be okay? Yeah. Okay. Any other topics we missed?
I wonder if we should be clear about the kind of information we want prepared for the four-town meeting. We will have a meeting on December 1st, and the meeting for four towns is on December 5th. But I wonder if we do, if we're wanting to hear from people, what is it that we want to hear? And would we ask that now so they could prepare the kind of information we're thinking about? And maybe just a subcommittee of 2 people could make a list of what you'd want to know to have at that meeting.
Susie, I just wanted to say that the everything that you were talking about, it's all available online at mass.gov between the DESC website and the financial data website. So it could be one person could collect that information for all 4 towns.
I guess I understand that, and I thought about that. The thing I wanted is to, if the towns were gathering that information, they would own it. It would be them representing their town in a specific way. So yeah, we could print it up, gather it and print it up, decide what that is, and have it at the meeting, which is not actually a meeting, it's a Zoom thing. But if we're wanting to hear from towns about how they're doing and using this as a listening session, I think we need to own what we want to know instead of not being very clear.
When it's happened before, when different towns have gone around and said, well, how much free cash do you have? I know you've got billions of dollars, so you clearly don't need statutory. I mean, that's how it's been used. When people have asked for specific information, it's been the basis of arguments they're trying to present. And I don't think you're talking about doing that.
I'm talking about avoiding that. I'm talking about having a common base of what we're looking at to be able to value each town, value the information from each town rather than throwing darts at each other.
Well, when we had the working groups,
right,
everybody wanted to present the numbers that were best for them. As Becky pointed out, everybody also wanted to throw darts at the towns that had good numbers in certain places. In a political environment like the 4-town meeting, I don't know how. I mean, it's good that the budget is presented by the finance director of the regional school because they're his numbers, and there's independent numbers, and I think they are independent. But if we ask other towns to bring their numbers or put together their numbers, they're going to bring the numbers that they want to bring, and they're going to hide the numbers they don't want us to see. I just don't know if it's productive, Susie. It's a good idea. It's true. And we should be aware of what's going on in other towns. So for us to accumulate that kind of information is certainly beneficial to us and can help us in negotiations. But everybody's going to use it as a club, and they're going to take the best club that works for them.
For me, the most important number is not a knowable number, which is, sort of what proportion of the town's allocation for the regional budget, what is the proportion of that of their projected revenues for the year? And I suspect that that's just not a number that it's going to be easy to project. But I think it's going to be a much more dramatic change for Amherst than it's going to be for the other towns. That's just speculating, but.
Well, good. We could discuss this on December 1st anyway.
Not if we're trying to get information prepared and give people time to prepare it. That's what I was just saying.
Oh, I personally think I could look into say, I would be interested in knowing what the percentage of the town of Amherst budget is going to be affected by whatever changes might be contemplated at the 4-town meeting. For example, one option A versus option B, what percentage of their budget does that, how much does that affect their overall spending? And I think we'd find out that it's extremely small, no matter which way we go for the town of Amherst, which is such a mass organization compared to that of Shutesbury. And I hope that what I believe is true, that is that Amherst is going to have just as much of a hard time politically cutting spending on a school that any other town would, or any other town would, because it's a high priority item. And there's a lot of other things in Amherst that are lower priority. They have a lot of services that they provide that are surely not as essential as education.
Susie, I think to go out to all 4 towns, part of the problem is also who in each town is collecting the information and if the source is reliable. And then you got to check and make sure that all the information is reliable. And that's why I think the meetings have having the region as the arbiter of materials and information. The budgets are full of information about the region, but I think once we start picking apart the other towns, you're gonna, I don't think there's a way to avoid it becoming argumentative.
Yeah, it's not productive. What usually happens, my experience in these meetings is the first meeting, the December 5th meeting in this case, everybody talks about how terrible things are in their town. And we all try to outdo each other in how dire our situation is. So, and it's just jockeying for position. This year, it's hard to argue that everybody's going to have that argument and nobody can argue with anybody. This year is just different. Anyways, but that's my experience. Everybody's going to start with how terrible things are in their town, how horrible their budget is going to be, and how little they can, of an increase they can withstand. And I don't think any data, any stats that we provide is going to change that, the way they approach it. John Trickey's back on the FinCom, right, in Pelham. That's always been his shtick. Yeah. And I'm sure Leverett's going to be the same way. They're going to come out with how horrible things are in their town and how difficult. Yeah. It's a very political process.
And it has a place when you're in a working group and you can have the conversations and compare the data, but the format, I don't know, is right to.
It's weird this year too. Zoom is going to be different. It's going to be different for us and for everyone.
I do hope we can caucus. I mean, I do hope that after we see the presentation, we can have a caucus and, refine the message or decide if we're going to change our tact based on what we hear. But I personally would think it'd be great if we left that meeting giving them some sort of a direction and giving them an idea. But, I guess that's what we're all going to do anyways. I'm babbling now. Sorry.
Hey, done.
Hey,
Yes. Where's Eric?
I saw that, Bob. Anything else that's not on the agenda we want to cover?
I'm all set.
Raise. Everybody good?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Okay. Go ahead with a vote.
John
George?
Mattis, aye.
George, here, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Susie, did you say aye?
Mosier, aye.
Walton? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You sign
Take
up.
care.
Good Thanksgiving to you all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Nice
Good night.
Thanksgiving.
See you
Yeah,
Thursday,
how about-
everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yep.
Happy Thanksgiving.